Greetings, friends, and welcome back to another episode of Dreamscapes. Today we have our friend Shelly from Oklahoma City, OK. We're recording on the 4th of July, but you guys won't see this till next weekend. So I wonder if we'll hear like daytime fireworks in the background. And so who knows? But they've been going on all around me since last night. The cats don't like it, of course. But thank you for being here. And so I didn't know this until I just started talking to Shelly, but there's she is a published author and she has an interesting job, and we're going to get around to that stuff in just 2 seconds. Would you kindly like, share, subscribe, tell your friends? Always need more volunteer dreamers, viewers for the game streams. Apparently, according to Nick Ricada, switching your tags between gaming and whatever else you do, entertainment, education, messes with the algorithm. So it's probably why nobody knows me. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. The algorithm just doesn't know what to do with me. I'm too unique and special. But anyway, 16 works of historical dream literature. The most recent, Dreams and Their Meanings by Horace G. Hutchinson, working on book 17. All this and more at BenjaminTheDreamWizard.com. And that's enough shilling from me. Donation links below, etc. So much for Shelly. I've done enough talking. Hello, thank you for being here.
Hi, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be on. So
so you said well, I can't my brain with the words your job title. Is it chemistry something or
so during the day I'm actually a research scientist, so I specialize in microbiology.
That was the word, microbiology.
Yeah.
Very cool. Yeah, and you said it was something to do with teeth, studying the mouth biome.
Study. Yeah, definitely. Microbiome is very complex, but we try to kind of simplify it a little bit. But yeah, I study the bacteria that are responsible for tooth decay and figure out how to kill them.
That is very cool. And immediately pops into my head the old Crest commercials with the tooth monster, and then you have the brigade of the Crest representing guys like an army going to fight the monster, tooth decay monster, whatever that was.
We're waging war every day.
Very true. Yeah, I gotta admit, I don't brush my teeth as often as I should. Probably, like before you go to bed, just a lot of I forgot. And you don't get out of bed and go do it. But it's an interesting thing too. Is I talked to my dentist once upon a time, and I'm like, if I were a lazy person, and I probably am, what would be more important, flossing 3 times a day or brushing 3 times a day? And they actually said flossing, getting that gunk out of the between the teeth, is a little more important than scouring the teeth with something abrasive.
Yes.
So now, I recommend it. I keep those little dental picks next to my bed. So I am in bed, getting drowsy, watching a show. Been watching the Witcher, most recent Witcher series. Not great. I mean, I like it. Like Henry Cavill. I like the show, but anyway, I keep those flossers next to the bed. I would recommend that for everybody.
Definitely. They have a saying in the industry that you brush at night to keep your teeth and you brush in the morning to keep your friends.
Yes. So yes, absolutely.
So,
that's one of the benefits
definitely.
One of the benefits of spending most of my time alone here in the little wizard cave is nobody tells me my breath stinks. They should probably be better if they did. But anyway, I don't know if you have any, it's weird to say, like interesting stories about your work in terms of, have you learned anything? Are there new developments? Would be an interesting thing. I mean,
we're kind of, our group is very small, but we're kind of the pioneers in our field, where we actually also specialize in dental materials, particularly the resins that are used when you have fillings.
Yeah.
So when you go into the dentist and, you have a cavity and they clean it out and then they give you a filling, that's actually a resin. And we have a new technology that utilizes something called nanoparticles, and they have antibacterial effects. So we're able to synthesize and make our own nanoparticles in the laboratory, add it to those resins, and so you get a much longer antibacterial, efficacy when you go in and you get a filling, because you can get something called secondary caries, which is where that resin in your teeth actually shrink a little bit, and bacteria can get down between the gap of that filling and your tooth and create another cavity. And so I just published a paper, and it shows the efficacy of our dental materials having antibacterial effects for up to 2 years after the initial like if you get a filling. So it's
Wow.
still being very, yeah. So so yeah, it's good to contribute in that way, because everybody has, typically almost everybody has some sort of restoration or some sort of
Oh yeah.
cavity that needs to be filled. So it's good to contribute in that and just kind of make everybody's lives a little bit easier and a little bit better. So
Yeah, dental stuff is actually, I mean, I'm a what am I trying to say? So I have these explosive trains of thought. Where I'm like, oh, so many things to say, and I don't know where to start. But so I'm a bit fascinated with historical stuff, and I'm like by no means an expert and a historian, so to speak. Like I know all the names and dates, and fuck me, I can't remember any of that shit. But I'm fascinated by the development of technologies and philosophy towards the sciences in general. So we go to the teeth thing. It's like so many ideas come into my head, like the idea that yes, everyone has dental concerns. It's just ubiquitous to the human condition. And that goes to say the idea of dreams, because that's how we get into the realm of, say, typical dreams. We look at common human experience that then is understood and symbolized commonly by multiple people almost ubiquitously. So we get, say, the common dream of trying to speak and being unable to form words, or specifically teeth falling out is a very common dream. And it very often has to do with, yeah, the ideas of disease and decay, inability to communicate. We symbolize our mouth as something which speaks, which expresses our ideas to others, makes relationship connections with people. Okay, that's one whole tangent. The other one is that I remember, so looking into the history of this kind of stuff, just on a whim one day, and it happens to stick in my brain. There was an old saying before like dentistry really became a thing, back in the days of the the best thing you could do was go to an apothecary or a surgeon to knock the teeth out, because the saying was, teeth are a curse, the sooner gone the better. And it was the idea that when you're a kid, everything's fine, a tooth falls out, no big deal, and then you start getting cavities, and then they start to ache, and then and then they rot. And this is before toothbrushes and whatnot. And so it used to be people suffered horribly with dental issues, and yeah, it's really changed in the last, I don't know what you'd say the time frame was. You probably know the history of dentistry better than I do.
well, I don't know as much as I probably should,
Yeah, I'm not
but
trying
I
to put you on
will
the spot.
say, no, it's okay. But I will say that the evolution of dentistry is so different from more of a something that is defined more by the medical field. In the beginning, dentistry was a trade where you would go to the blacksmith, or you would go to your barber, and get a tooth knocked out while you're getting a shave if you really wanted to. And so the evolution of dentistry is and also being in conjunction with more scientific discovery, and it's kind of funny because it's almost like I'm going on a tangent now. It's
Please
kind of
do.
funny because it's almost like our subconscious already knew that, because you're saying with your dreams how things that affect the teeth or the mouth can mean a whole host of other things. Well, a lot of discoveries that we're learning is that a lot of systemic problems in terms of our overall health and well-being also begins in the mouth as well. And so we have seen a fundamental shift over dentistry becoming more of a trade to becoming a pillar in the medical community, and that oral healthcare is just as important as overall healthcare and medicine. And so it's kind of interesting to see that shift probably within like the last probably since the 1950s, and kind of seeing that shift and especially within the last 30 years, it's been really combining, or good oral health means actually good overall body health. So
Definitely. Yeah. Yeah. And that also, so part of the dream interpretation thing is getting a personal understanding of people's symbols, but those personal understandings are also nested in community or local experience of a thing, what's common in their area, then what's also common to the human condition based on how we are materially composed in the world and how we interact with other physical substances, water, earth, other people, etc. So you get these shifts in. So that there's folks who would go, they're more inclined to believe in the or lean into the dream book, dream dictionary type of thing, which is and isn't accurate in some ways. It a lot of it does speak to the kind of collective unconscious, ubiquitous or common human experience type of stuff we have with objects on that level, but it also changes over time as well. So what was true about the common human experience of teeth and tooth problems 2,000 years ago is not the same today. Now we have a more ubiquitous understanding or common human experience of, well, dentists are a thing, and you can get a cavity filled. You can get antibiotics for an impacted wisdom tooth that's infected and throbbing and whatnot. Whereas that would have been just a horrible experience that people just suffered with, because maybe you're out on the frontier and there are no barbers and you don't have the medical knowledge to pull your own tooth or do what is it, the Tom Hanks thing on the island with the ice skate.
The ice skate, yes.
I don't know.
No.
Honestly, that was horrifying. I don't know if I could have done that, and I'm not surprised he blacked out. You can black out from pain, and
you can.
Yeah. Oh, that's awful. Oh, I got that in my head. No, make it go away. Yeah. So that's there are long story short, our interpretation or understanding of an individual's dream is going to change because of the cultural setting and the medical advancements and the world they live in. Yeah, I don't know if there's anything for you to comment on in there. Sometimes I go off on tangents.
I mean, you're absolutely right. I mean, I think that in terms of dreams, it's, dreams are multifaceted and fragmented in terms of how you approach and view your own life. I mean, it really is kind of your subconsciousness kind of talking and speaking to you in a language all of its own. So, of course, you're going to, that's going to be affected by your interpretation of what things are. And that's going to change based on your experience and your, the way that you view the world, I guess. And so, I fully agree with that.
Definitely. That's certainly what it seems like in my experience. And, that brings me to another point is like, I don't want to put myself forward as like the ultimate incontrovertible authority. I think I have some ideas that are true. I think I've come to some intuitive understanding of things that seems functional, but I believe I am still learning myself, and there's more to learn, and that and certainly all I can offer is my inspired thoughts, so to speak, inspired by your circumstance and then the associations I make. And I try to cover the gamut, or at least start with things that I think are most relevant, or highlight maybe two different directions we could go with things and see what feels right to you. But, if you take the same dream to somebody else and blind, and they give you a slightly different understanding or completely different understanding, that might also be correct, or I might be wrong and that might be correct. So, and I've had that experience. Yeah. Go ahead.
I was going to say that, for me, I'm always on a quest for knowledge. And just because I get, one interpretation or something, then that doesn't mean that, it might help me through even just a small part of it. And to me, there's something to be gained from that. It's kind of funny that, you call yourself a wizard and everyone thinks that it's more like for magic and things. But for me, I see a wizard as more of like a mentor, like a dispenser of knowledge, or, through their own experiences. So it's kind of like this nice cyclic type thing where I am learning from you, but then you're also learning from me. And through our experiences together, we can kind of get to a different place in our lives, and maybe a better place in our lives. So I'm all for it. Like I love perspective. I love being challenged. I love, thinking about things that I experience. So
for sure.
Yeah.
Well, you hit upon two important things there. And one is the, what is, as much as it just tickles me to say I'm a wizard. I think it's funny. I laugh inside every time I say that. I'm like, oh yeah, that's goofy. Yes, it is. And I think it's hilarious, but also there is the archetype of the wise one, or the wise old man, the wizard. That's where we get the term from. And if you and this is the thing, I think anybody can do this. If you understand the framework of an archetype, sometimes we do it accidentally, but also we can do it intentionally. You step into that archetype and embody it in the world. So a teacher is what a teacher does. If you don't have to be hired, paid by the government to do the job of teaching, to pass along knowledge to someone. You're talking to your friend and say, hey, I read this thing the other day. You just became a teacher. You stepped into the role of providing information to someone that didn't have it in a way they could understand. And now they learned something. And you also, as you were saying, you learned something about the process of communication, how to effectively organize information and communicate it. So I'm always appreciative to my guest dreamers. You are training me. This is, someday I will get to, I hope, crossing my fingers, 1,000 interviews, and then I'll be a real wizard. Then I will I will have done enough that I think I know what I'm doing. We're only on, what is this going to be, episode 133? I'm on the road. It's
you gotta keep going.
They
say in the author community that you're not a true author unless you've written 1,000,000 words. So I understand.
Yeah,
I understand that.
Thanks for bringing that up too. It's a great transition into, you are a published author too. You said you're writing a young adult fiction series.
Yes, it's a young adult coming of age series, and so it's called Her Purpose. And can I show? I think I have a book.
Please do. If you need to step away and grab it, go for it. Yeah.
Oh, nope, I can reach. I'm good. So nice. This is my novel. Woo.
Oh, there you go. There's a screenshot for the thumbnail.
Yeah, definitely. And so this is the name of the series is called The Starlight Trine Chronicles, and it's book. It's going to be a 5-book series, and so hopefully I can come out with book 2 by the end of this year. And so, yeah, it's young adult fantasy. It's kind of funny because going through being a young adult author, it's amazing how many adults read young adult fantasy as well. I think the majority of my readers are are actually, probably between the ages of 25 and 40. So yeah. That was really interesting to find out. But it's a story about this little girl, and it's tradition for her people to go on something called a wander to find her purpose in life. And so she leaves her village and she goes up over the hill, and she comes across this black shaggy dog who actually ends up speaking to her. And that's like her version of her wizard, I guess. So he tells her, he's like, well, you could go and follow the traditions of your people and walk the path that they did before in order to find your purpose, or you can go see a wise mystic in the mountains called Tyr the Mins, and surely he can help you. And so it's her going on this journey and learning more about herself along the way, and new experiences and the friends that she makes. And yeah, there's just it's written kind of more of a fairy tale style, and there's wonder and there's whimsy, and it was really enjoyable to write. So I'm excited to see where the series goes.
Would you say it falls more into the, just fiction, or into the maybe kind of fantasy magic-ish realm?
Yeah, probably fantasy magic-ish, yeah, for sure.
Good.
Like, kind of in the same vein as like Princess Bride or Neverending Story or The Last Unicorn, kind of that, where we grew up in the 80s. Well, I grew up in the 80s.
Me too.
And so that. So if you're familiar with that type of genre, then that's going to be right up your alley. So.
Oh, yeah. And shout out to The Last Unicorn. If anyone has never heard of that or never seen it, or you've come across it and you were like, oh, that can't be any good. It is really good. It was adapted from a book, as most of the best stuff is. And it's a lot different than you think. You're going to see something very unique. It's got a little bit of that Ralph Bakshi style. Did Ralph Bakshi do that?
I think he did. Yeah.
He's got that very distinct style, but such a great story with deep philosophical themes. And, it doesn't end like you think. It's not a typical fairy tale. Not going to spoil anything. Lots of clever stuff too. Very great adaptation.
Absolutely. And Peter S. Beagle is one of my favorite authors who wrote The Last Unicorn, and it's because his endings are not necessarily, he's very good at ending stories in ways that you still take to heart, but they're not necessarily what you expect. And I was blown away as a child, and I'm still blown away with whatever he writes now. So yeah, he's great.
There's I think we've come to in this modern time, at this moment in our age, whatever it is, the zeitgeist, we have unfortunately entered what am I trying to say? We've had our stories sanitized too much. If I can put it that way, we've got kind of the age of the Disney happy ending, the Grimm's fairy tales told where we don't want to be a downer. We don't want this to be a tragedy. So we'll just make the hero win instead of losing, which was the point of that particular story. I think changing them loses the meaning. So there's something, there's nothing wrong with telling a comedy versus a tragedy, and you can't live in tragedy all the time. And sometimes you want inspirational tales that show you how to live and put you through struggles. But at the end, you're left with a positive feeling. But sometimes you need object lessons. Sometimes you need the hero didn't win this time, and here's why. And here's how you avoid that tragedy in your own life. That was my first thought on that. Secondly, before I forget, I wanted to give folks your book website. I forgot to ask that in the
It's just my name. It's Shelley, Shelley, the letter D, and then HIERS, ShelleyDHires.com.
rs.com. SHELLEY D
and then
hires
D
HIERS.
Yeah,
okay,
got
it. Good. Then now I've got that written out properly. I'm going to underline that. And actually, if you're watching this right now, link in the description. Go down there, pause the video, go check it out, or open a separate tab and browse while you listen. Another point I wanted to come back to. I'm getting dry here. The idea of quote unquote young adult fantasy appealing to people in the 25 to 40 range. In that range is where my wife read the Harry Potter series before we went and saw the movies. And another one. What was the other one? Oh, the Divergent or trilogy. That one with Saoirse Ronan, I think, or something like that. So Saoirse, however she says it. I actually watched an interview with her to learn how to pronounce her name because I was thinking Soares or something. I don't know. I don't know how to pronounce Gaelic or Irish stuff. And there was Hunger Games, and these have been massively popular. And it's not just teenagers going to these, like adults have outgrown it. And now, okay, there's all that, and we're going to get into that too. But I wanted to also relate it to the idea of the appealing to that kind of same age demographic, which I'm, just barely out of them, late, heading into my late 40s. The idea of the high school anime setup being very appealing to a broader age range than just 14-year-olds. And a lot of it is, these are iconic mythological archetypal frameworks that we all understand because we were that age at one point, and we're always exploring, I would say, the broader themes of coming of age. How do we become who we are? And some of us in midlife, some people might look and go, "Oh, this is classic. Ben quit, working as in inpatient psychiatric care, and now he's doing this wizard thing. What is he going to buy a Maserati next? If you have a briefcase with $1 million, I'll take it. But no, that would not be my I'd pay off my house. But it's also, the idea of the midlife crisis is it's not. It can be a crisis if you have not been paying attention to yourself, if you've been blindly following someone else's path for you, or blindly walking into the world. It's kind of an unintentional. You can accidentally end up in a spot where you did not plan to be and need to reevaluate, and that can become a crisis. It can also just be I like to call it midlife reevaluation. I've hit 40. I've got half of my life finished. I've only got half left to go. What do I want to do with the rest of it? It's very typical archetypal experience. And a lot of us heading into that is as a human experience. We look back at these stories and go, now, how does that relate to me, to my personal story? What did I do with those opportunities? Did I miss them? Was I unaware of it? So I would say just this whole genre of young adult fiction is meant to and should inspire us to examine our Socrates style, the unexamined life. Look at what we're doing and why. what is the path you've chosen? If you're on a path someone else chose for you, if you're not choosing a path and you're just floating along with the breeze, maybe give it a little more thought. So I've said a lot. I'll let you
No,
jump in.
I agree. I agree completely, especially with my own writing. And I've had people, I think also that as you get older, some of the things that you experience when you're a kid or a child, you don't appreciate as much as when you're older. And I've had people come to me after reading this book and they're like, it's like you gave my inner child a hug. Or they say that because one of the goals that I had with writing this book is that I wanted it to be I wanted to evolve with the reader. So if you read it when you're 10 or 11 or 12, you can take things very much at face value. But if you come back as an adult, maybe you're feeling nostalgic. Maybe you're like, hey, oh, wow, I found this copy of this book that I read 15 years ago. Let's reread it. There's so much more meaning and so much more depth into what you're getting and processing in terms of information. And it really helps you try to reevaluate, where you've been and where you are now and where you're going. And so sometimes I feel like that those young adult fans, they kind of almost fulfill a need of when you need it, what you wanted as a child, but you just may not have been able to understand it at the time. So you do get a little like that sense of, oh yeah, okay, I get it. I get it as an adult.
And I think that's necessary too. So where am I going with this kind of thing? It's like we used to have, and we're talking 10, 25,000 years ago, we would have smaller tribes. We would have the storytellers. We would have the people, the shamans and medicine men and all the different, the lore keepers. And it was their job to pass along these traditional stories of the people, whoever they are, in order that the children could learn how to then become a functioning adult member of the tribe. And in some ways we've lost that, or we've outsourced it a bit too much. But that's a different issue. But still, I think a lot of that then has passed down to like our tribe has expanded so much that we don't get it like in our family or in our social group. We don't have in our immediate company, like I would say most of us, because we've lost that small tribal thing. We don't have designated present lore keeper storytellers. Our parents a little bit maybe, but that's not their specialty. They're like, I work a job and I put food on the table. What do you want? It's not their thing, so we get it through authors, we get it through storytellers, and the variable quality of the storytelling these days being what it is, you never know, but it's good. And actually that brings me around too. I was like, I can't wait for you to finish your series and maybe shop it out and we'll see it on Netflix, Amazon. I think there's there's so many great there's so many great stories that need to be told, that should be told, that are that make for better writing than what we've seen lately, I would say, just to put it nicely.
Yeah. I would say probably right now I can probably afford one lug nut on that Maserati, but
exactly.
we'll keep going. We'll keep moving forward. I'm stubborn, so I don't give up easily, but we'll see. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah.
And
we're certainly not going to judge your success or mine by, I don't have 1 million viewers today. I just don't. And so be it. No. I may never have 1 million viewers. That's fine. I'm doing the thing. This is the thing.
Yeah,
as long as I can keep doing this, I really don't care. This isn't just a get rich quick scheme. Certainly not a get rich quick. It's been 3 years. I'm not rich yet. But I would say finishing the series, putting it out there, whoever it touches, whether or not you get an Amazon. I'm kind of manifesting that for you. Let's put that out in the universe.
Oh, thank you.
That idea, like, yeah. But whether or not that happens, that's not the marker of success. It's, did you do the thing? Did you put something out there worthwhile? There's folks, but there's an interesting, this is a whole tangent too, but it just came to mind. Have you ever heard of Ingersoll Rand and the Adventures of Baron Trump? Does that sound familiar?
Yeah, right. I didn't realize the name, but yes, I have heard of it.
And that is a weird connection. But who knew about that guy like 100 years ago or 150 years ago when he was writing in the 1800s? How popular was that book series? Now people are referencing it and they're buying, new editions of it, and it has sudden relevance. And, there's definitely a thing of authors or artists that do not become famous in their day and they get rediscovered later and they're like, okay, this was actually important. And sometimes things can be important on their own and no one knows, and that's okay too. That's
right.
That's
I'm definitely doing it for myself first and foremost, but I do like the idea that not to say that I'm I'm out there to create a legacy, but there's something kind of neat to think that my words are going to somehow be in existence well after I'm gone. It
Yeah.
might be like it might be like a dusty paperback, like shoved in a box up in the attic, but it's still there. So I always find that kind of interesting and kind of think, wow, like that's something that is going to be, exist beyond me when I, shuck this mortal coil and,
Yeah.
not cease to exist. But
That is
it's always kind of interesting how words stay forever in a way.
definitely. Yeah. And that's one of the things that I'm gonna not comforted by or proud of exactly, but it's a thing I think is important is that I started okay, why am I writing all these books? Well, because I'm reading them. And
Mm-hmm.
here's the thing, I'm not writing them all. The what I've got so far is historical dream literature. This is other authors that I have pulled from the annals of history to number one, educate myself. What has been written down throughout time about dreams? How have they been conceptualized? How have they been understood? How has dream interpretation as an art or a science evolved over time? So, but then also, by way of preserving that knowledge in a modern edition, um, procuring a hopefully an income. I think the most I've ever sold is 10 books in a month. That's fine. That's fine.
That's fine.
I would like it to be 1,000, but we're gonna get there maybe someday. Um, and knowing that it's going to persist, it's going to carry that forward. It's my in a way legacy, which I'm not really invested in being remembered all throughout time. I don't really care so much as securing a living right now, sharing the knowledge, edifying myself, all that good stuff. Um, but but also that's not a bad thing. If hopefully someday from now, my edition of these books, 100 years from now, are rediscovered by someone and say, "Hey, this guy took the time to really do this work, and these are good. These are so." What I do with my books particularly, so I'm editing older works, I'm updating Middle English
Mm-hmm.
to readable Modern English, translating Latin, putting in footnotes with historical persons. So they're like late 1800s. They would say, "We all know who Bobby is," and Bobby was a very iconic sports hero in London at a particular time when a guy wrote a book. That's the fake example, but well, I'm going to go, okay, who's this sports guy named Bobby at this particular, and I look it up and I find the guy and I put the footnote in there. And now people don't have to go, what's this guy talking about? It's not that confusing. They get the references, translating archaic terms like, oh, this is what we used to call, hallucinations. They had it by this title back in the day, especially psychology terms. Anyway, I'm rambling again too about my book thing, but
No,
I
I
feel you on
mean,
that process. Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. And honestly, what you're doing is fundamentally important because, like you said, just like dreams back in the day may have different contexts in
Yeah.
terms of their meaning. You still need to be a conduit in order to, how people understand things, and because so much has changed in terms of reaching into more of a modern time period. And so it's good that we have people like you out there to kind of bridge that gap between what was and what is. And so
Yeah.
I'm sure it's fascinating for you, for sure, when
Definitely.
you get to learn lots of things, especially if you're more of a history buff and all that. And you're like, oh, okay, so yeah, that's great. I need to put this down.
Yeah.
So I find that fascinating. I think that's a really, really neat undertaking for sure.
Thank you. Yeah, I am very fascinated by the how things came to be what they are in a
Mhm.
lot of ways. That's kind of my angle on history. It's not, I'm just not memorizing names and dates because reasons, but the idea of I get into a particular some of my favorite stories to tell are like the origins of certain words. So there's the expression balls to the wall. We're going balls to the wall, and you
Yeah.
think of it as accelerating or going all out,
Mhm.
full force, and people are like, what does it have to do with testicles or something? Like, no, actually nothing. That's not, you could be forgiven for that, but it doesn't have to do with like a stick shift kind of thing. So where does that term come from? Once upon a time back in early airplane days, and even today, you would have, say, the instrument panel in front of you. It's got all your bells and whistles and dials. Well, that was called the wall. That was the instrument panel in an airplane. And the throttle had a knob, a round knob on it, a ball. So you would go balls to the wall, full throttle, literally where that term came from. That's what I'm getting into with this kind of stuff. I love those because then when you put, I had an epiphany a long time ago. Words are made up of other words that are made up of other discrete terms that people used to use. So we get into the idea of Greek and Latin modifiers. What can you modify a word? Suffixes and prefixes on different things. So you've got a well, to use the word understandable or non-understandable, and then or theist and atheist. A meant against or the opposite of, that kind of thing, or without. A is without, technically, and then all of our words and that kind of understanding of how words are composed, then you start thinking about how people conceive of them. And that all reads into the dream thing too, of like, just, okay, well, what is your understanding of this particular thing? It's not exactly parallel, because the way people think of words is not always, as I do, based on their roots and how the concept is composed of, say, maybe 3 or 4 discrete ideas that are all jammed together, and people think of it as one word, as a unit. And it is, and it isn't. But then you can kind of pick apart people's symbols like that too, and say, okay, this is actually an amalgamation of multiple different ideas in one. And that's also something that I've seen mentioned in these books, the idea of dream images being a conjunction of things. So it isn't just, say, a 90-foot tall monster that looks like your mom. That's one unit of type of thing, but it's your mom. It's 90 feet tall. It's a monster, and it performs a particular action in a particular place for a particular reason. Now you pick all that apart and you can start saying, I can relate it to these different things in my life. How's your relationship with your mother? Why is a monster attacking you right now? Why is it so big? Yeah. Oh yeah, anyway, rambling on that.
No, I understand. It was kind of funny when you were talking about the prefixes and suffixes, and it was, I was actually kind of getting into that a little bit, because I think that a lot of things that we kind of get used to certain words, but then we don't really understand how they can change if you drop or add one. And so one of my favorite ones that I just learned recently was disgruntled. And then I was like, well, what happens if I learn, drop the dis? And it's actually a word. It's gruntled, and it means, to be pleased with something. And I'm like, that's kind of adorable. So I love the fact that you can be gruntled about something,
right?
But no one ever says that anymore. And
and it sounds weird because you've never heard that before. A waiter comes and asks you, sir, how do you find your meal? My good man, I am perfectly gruntled.
Exactly. I mean, so there's something. So I really like playing with words and that, and kind of finding those words that have kind of been lost to us, because number one, it helps me understand the roots of words, and helps me with my writing, and it helps me with, kind of honoring the things that we may have forgotten. And so that's that's one of those things that I just find kind of interesting. So
very definitely. Cool. Well, we could probably ramble for days, and we have all kinds of time, but still, I wanted to offer you the opportunity to jump into the dream thing. You feel ready to start? Okay, let me make a little let me
get a drink, and we'll be ready to go.
Yep, we're gonna wipe off the cat hair, and we got 38 50-ish on the time. I'm getting better at writing these down. I say that every time. I'm getting repetitive saying I'm getting better at writing these down.
Well, you're getting better at saying that you're getting better at writing things down. So
right, exactly. Now we're gonna get meta on the meta. Benjamin the Dream Wizard wants to help you pierce the veil of night and shine the light of understanding upon the mystery of dreams. Every episode of his Dreamscapes program features real dreamers gifted with rare insight into their nocturnal visions. New Dreamscapes episodes appear every week on YouTube, Rumble, Odyssey, and other video hosting platforms, as well as free audiobooks highlighting the psychological principles which inform our dream experience, and much, much more. To join the wizard as a guest, reach out across more than a dozen social media platforms and through the contact page at benjaminthedreamwizard.com, where you will also find the wizard's growing catalog of historical dream literature, available on Amazon, featuring the wisdom and wonder of exploration into the world of dreams over the past 2,000 years. That's Benjamin the Dream Wizard on YouTube and at benjaminthedreamwizard.com. Okay, so usual process. I shut up and listen. Our friend Shelly's going to tell us her dream beginning to end like a story. This is what I saw. This is what happened. Then we'll go through it again and see if we can make sense of it. So I'm ready when you are.
Yeah. Um, Unfortunately, if it's okay, I'm gonna kind of put it on its head a little bit. My dreams are actually more of a series of dreams that have more thematic elements that are the same. For the past about year or so, I have dreamed about interacting with a particular bear. And I've had more than 20 dreams involving this bear, and it's actually prompted me to actually do a dream journal. And so if it's okay, instead of just one dream, they're simple more, but I would like to kind of go into some multiple ones that I think are a little bit more relevant or interesting, maybe. And so in the beginning, I did dream of a bear, but he was more of like a bystander, or he would be in a dream, but he didn't interact with me, and I didn't really think he was out of place, even though it might have been like I was walking down the street in New York City and there was like a bear at the crosswalk. My dream self wasn't exactly like, oh my gosh, there's a bear there. It was more like he was just kind of watching me, and I was just kind of going about my day. And it started about a year ago when I actually started interacting with this particular bear. And the first dream that I had was that I was actually in the forest, and there was a pool, kind of like a spring, and I was swimming in it. And I was really enjoying myself. I do like to go swimming, and so I was really having a nice time. And so this bear comes out of the woods, and he's a black bear, and he has like a white splotch on his chest. And he comes out of the woods, and he goes over to the bank, and he kind of lays down. And I don't pay him much mind because in my dream self, I've seen the bear before, and I don't think anything of it. So I'm swimming, I'm enjoying myself, I'm ready to get out of the pool. And as I'm getting out, the bear actually stands up, and he goes over to me, and he blocks my path. And at first I'm polite. I'm like, hey, Mr. Bear, do you mind moving over a bit? Because I'm trying to get out. And he doesn't move. And so I kind of go over a couple more feet trying to get out of the pool, and he blocks my path again. So I'm like, okay. So I'm like, fine, I'll swim to the other side. So I go and swim to the other side, and the bear follows me, and he blocks my path. And so I'm starting to get a little annoyed, and I'm like, fine, I'm just going to get out anyway, and you can just move. So I crawl up onto the rocks to get out, and he takes his paw, and he puts it on my shoulder, and he shoves me back into the water. And not like under the water, but, just back into the water. And I'm like, okay. So there's a time, kind of like a montage of me trying to get out of the pool over and over again, and the bear, stops me, prevents me from doing it, whatever. And there was one time I'm fine, I'm going to go all in. And so I try to swim to the other side as fast as I possibly can. And I hear a splash behind me. And I know that the bear is in the water and he's coming after me. And so I swim as hard as I can, and I get to the bank, and I can remember feeling me, grab onto the rocks, and I feel something around my waist, and I look down, and the bear has actually put his arm around me and is pulling me back. And so I start fighting because I'm like, I don't want to be in the water anymore. I want to get out. And so I start struggling, and I feel this pain in my shoulder, and I look down, and the bear has actually like embedded its teeth into my shoulder, and he's holding me and kind of pinning me so that I'm not like moving around. And it hurts, and so I start yelling. And I'm struggling, and the bear is holding me by the waist. He has his teeth in my shoulder, and he's using his free arm to kind of backstroke so that he gets deeper into the water, and he's pulling me with him. After some yelling and struggling still, I hear this crash out of the forest. And I look up, and there is an elephant coming out of the forest. And it's a black elephant, but it has an interesting pattern on its hind end, kind of like an Appaloosa horse. You know how they have that blanket of spots, except he has a white blanket with like little black spots. It's but he's mostly black. So it comes out of the forest and it crouches down on its knees and it wraps its trunk around my middle. And I don't know how the physics worked, but in the dream it made sense. But basically there was like a tug of war between the elephant and the bear. And the elephant actually gets me free, wrenches me from the bear, and puts me down on the ground. And it immediately starts pushing me towards the forest. And I'm kind of like, wait a second here. I'm not going to be pushed around by this bear, and I'm certainly not going to be pushed around by you. And so I'm cold, I'm wet, I'm bleeding, I don't feel well. And so I'm just like, what are you doing? And I didn't have a lot of time to kind of think about that, because I look over, the bear is coming out of the forest and coming out of the water and is actually engaging the elephant. And so the elephant starts stamping and starts trumpeting, and the bear starts roaring and swiping, and they don't really come to blows. It was more like a intimidation posturing type thing. And then all of a sudden the elephant just kind of shakes its head and just walks off into the forest. And I'm standing there face to face with the bear, and I'm like, well, now what? And as soon as I say that, I wake up. And that has precipitated many dreams that are slightly different, where the bear, I'll be doing something in the forest, and the bear comes out of the forest, and he wants me to go down a path, not like an actual physical path, like there's not like a path in the forest, but a path that he kind of wants me to go. And he'll either get in my bubble, or he'll herd me, or he will try to push me a certain way. But then when I take a step, I don't know where he wants me to go, because he's a bear. He doesn't talk to me. He doesn't really give me any indication. The only indication is when I choose wrong. He rules very much by a stick than a carrot. So if I take a step forward and he doesn't do anything, then I know that I have quote unquote chosen correctly. But let's say that I want to go left and he wants me to go a different way, then he will growl at me, or he'll swipe me or at me with his claws, or he'll kind of body check me in such a way that I fall to the floor, or I get bruised by him, or, it's not a comfortable situation. And I have several dreams where I'm trying to understand what the heck is going on, and I get to a place where I feel like I'm in the right place, but then nothing happens. And an example of that is another dream where he kind of does his herding method, where I come into a clearing and there is a church, a white church. It's more like a chapel. It's not like a huge church, but it's like a chapel in the woods. And it's white and it's very pristine, but I also know that it's old somehow in my dream. But there's no indication that it is, there's no rotting wood, or there's no moss growing up the sides or vines or anything. I just get the impression, and it has stained glass windows. And I look down on my bear friend and I'm like, well, do you want me to go inside? And of course he doesn't give me any indication. And so I go up the steps and I go inside, and at the front of the altar, at the front of the church by the altar, there's a lot of hustle and bustle. And I look up there and I'm like, what are they doing? And so there's people there, and it looks like that they're setting up for a concert, almost like a rock concert. They have a drum set, and they have the lights, and someone's testing a smoke machine, and there's a roadie type guy, and he's up the front. And I go up there and he notices me, and he's like, what are you doing here? And I look down at the bear, because I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing here. The bear brought me. And he goes, are you here for the show? And I'm like, sure, I'm here for the show. Why not? And so he's like, well, you're early. And I'm like, oh, well, can I just wait? And he goes, yeah, that's okay. And so I go and I sit at the pew at the front of the church, and I'm kind of watching things, watching people get set up, and I'm starting to get kind of drowsy. And I remember closing my eyes, and I feel this weight on my lap, and I look down, and the bear he was sitting beside me. I'm sorry. He followed me to the pew, and he sat in the aisle, and the bear had actually put his head in my lap, and he started dozing off too. And I remember thinking, I'm like, gosh, you're such a jerk, but like, you look kind of cute when you're sleeping, type of a thing. And so I start like petting his head, and we both kind of start getting drowsy together. And as I'm falling asleep, I wake up. And it's one of these things where we kind of have like this love-hate relationship in a way. Not love-hate, but I get frustrated with him and everything, and there was one dream where I was in the forest and I was looking for I was morel mushroom hunting. And if you've never gone morel mushroom hunting, I highly recommend it. But I was there, and I had a pain in my kind of midsection where it was like below my ribs but above my belly button. And I'm like, man, I must have some indigestion or something. Let me finish up and then I'll get going. And I keep having this pain, and it keeps getting worse and worse and worse. And pretty soon I'm doubled over and I'm on the floor of the forest. And I'm like, oh my gosh, and it was the first time where I'm like, I'm going to die here, because I'm in so much pain. I cannot move. I can't get out. I can't do anything. And so I remember looking up, and on the branch there was this raven. But the raven was, now that I'm saying this, I realize that all my animals are black and white for some reason. The raven was black, but then he had white wings. And I remember me reaching up like for help, like doing something towards the raven. And the raven kind of looks down at me, and even though I'm dreaming, I get the impression of him just saying, well, what the hell do you want me to do? I'm a raven. And so he flies off, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to die here. This is great. And so out of the forest comes the bear, and the bear comes over to me, and I'm not fully comfortable with him being in my bubble, because he's not exactly the friendliest of things. And he comes up and he starts sniffing me all over. And I'm like, okay, this is making me uncomfortable. I really don't like this. And he starts sniffing underneath my shirt. And I'm like, oh my gosh, is he going to eat me? And then I'm sitting here and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm going to be eaten by this bear. And then I start thinking, like, do bears go for the stomach or the liver first? Like, I'm just processing like how he's going to be eating me. And he ends up sniffing so much that he kind of rucks up my shirt. And I look down, and there is this black tail-like thing poking from my midsection. And I'm like, what the heck is that? And he grabs the tail, and he starts pulling. And out of my midsection comes this black, goo, stringy stuff. It's fibrous, and it's just creepy. It's gross. And he's like, keeps pulling like some macabre scarf trick or something, and it keeps coming and coming and coming out of me. And he has it so much, he's pulling so much and pulling so much out that he starts turning in a circle to kind of take up that slack. And the black stuff kind of starts kind of encircling him as he's turning. And he keeps turning and turning and turning. And at the very end, I feel this knot, like this huge, like something like just being stuck there. And he gives this great wrench with his head and body. And it, I can actually feel it like popping out of me. And I look over to the bear, and the bear is totally wrapped up in this black, gooey stuff. And he falls to the floor, and he can't move. And so I get up and I'm like, oh my gosh, what do I do? And so I grab a huge stick. I remember back in my Latin days when I was taking Latin, my wonderful teacher used to call it a baculum. It's a big stick. And so I get the stick and I wedge it in between the bear and those black strands, and I pull with both ends, and I'm breaking the strands off this bear. And I keep going until I finally get him free. And he's exhausted and I'm exhausted, and so I just lay down next to him. And I look at him and I'm like, and I just say, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. And he kind of gives this huff, like, what the heck am I going to do with you? Like, it's like when a mom's exasperated with you and they're just like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do with you? And in the end, he just kind of puts his forehead on mine and just kind of, we kind of just kind of have this moment, and I wake up. And so my final dream is happened last week or a week and a half ago, and I have this baby. I wake up, I'm in the forest again, I have this baby bird in my hands, and I'm trying to find its home, I'm trying to find its nest, and the bear is coming out of the woods again, and I'm like, so I'm just like, okay. I start pleading with the bear. I'm like, look, I know you want me to go somewhere, but can I just find this baby bird? And, its home. I want to find its nest. Can I just do that? And so the bear just kind of sits down. And I'm like, okay. So I look around and I finally find its nest in a tree. And so I climb the tree and I put the baby bird back in the nest. And I remember there's 4 eggs, and they were robin's eggs. They were blue. I remember that. And the baby bird was the only one that had hatched. So I climb back down and I'm like, okay. And the bear stands up, and this type of hurting wasn't as painful because I kind of was like, okay, you did me a solid, so I'm not going to fight you every single path, every single turn. And we get to this clearing, and there's no trees in the middle of the clearing, but the trees are so compact on the edges that it forms a ring. And I look at the bear, I'm like, do you want me to go in the middle of this ring and in this clearing? And of course, he doesn't say anything. And so I'm like, okay. And so I take a step towards the middle of this clearing, and on one foot, I look down, and like all of these vines and mushrooms and flowers kind of bloom around where my foot is. And I'm like, wow, that's kind of cool. And I get kind of excited because I'm like, oh, wow, something's happening. Because, typically when I get to where I need to go, I look at them and I'm like, okay, now what? And then I just wake up. And so I'm kind of like, oh, okay, cool, something's happening. And then I take another step, and with my other foot, and it's just, everything is scorched. Everything is black. It's like there's a burn mark of my footprint where it is. And so I have, take a couple more experimental steps, and one foot, makes everything green and lush and beautiful, and the other foot, kind of destroys everything. And so I'm like, well, I don't want to do that. This is a beautiful forest. And so I start hopping on one foot that only brings forth like the green and everything. And I keep hopping and hopping, trying to figure out what this bear wants, because I keep going deeper into the clearing. And I end up tripping on a rock. Like a rock catches my foot, and I totally wipes me out. And so I fall, and I'm like spread eagle flat on my back. And when I hit the ground, I hear a crack, like a thunderstruck. I mean, it almost rattles your teeth. It's so loud. And I look up, and the forest, the clearing has changed, where one half the clearing is full of like trees and flowers and vines and flora and fauna and all this stuff, and the other half is just totally destroyed. And the line of demarcation is lined up completely with my body, where like one side is green and the other side is burned. And so that's when the bear makes his way towards me. And as he's coming towards me, he kind of ambles in between the two sides. And as he's doing that, he changes depending on what side he's on. So if he's on the green side, he becomes bigger, and his coat becomes lustrous and looks like an oil slick, and he kind of glows with like this silver type aura, like this light. And then if he wanders into the burn side, then he becomes smaller and emaciated, and like hunks of fur are missing, and he's burned, and he just looks awful. And so he keeps coming up towards me so much that I'm still flat on my back, and he's actually like standing over me. And when I look up at him, he is actually split in two, like the surrounding areas, where one side is like this glowy bear side, and the other side is this, emaciated burn bear side. And he looks down at me, and I kind of wish I was an artist, because this is just the final thing that just kind of leaves.
Fantastic.
Yeah, it would be so cool if I could just like do some sort of art. But as I'm looking up, I see this bear head, and like half of it is, glowing and beautiful, and the other half is burned, but it's existing in the opposite area of the forest. So the burned half is in the green side, and the glowing side is in the burned side. And he looks down, and our noses like just about touch, and then that's when I wake up. And so another thing about that particular dream is that I remember that everything is very round. Like I remember how round my hands are when I'm cupping that baby bird, or I remember how round the nest is when I put it in, or I remember how round the bear head is looking, when I look up, or the clearing. So I just remember that there's just a lot of like circles, roundness. I don't know. It's kind of weird that I remember that, but
for sure.
Anyway, I know that I've spoken a lot. I know that this is probably going to take some time, but I feel like I need to kind of, I don't know what my subconscious is trying to tell me, and that there are some themes and the overarching, I keep interacting with the overarching like thematic elements, but they're still very different dreams. And so I didn't really know how to convey all of that and with you. So I figured, we can pick and choose if you want, but those are like some of the examples of the ones that stick out to me the most.
Yeah.
That I think we can glean some information from. So.
Well, I didn't want to interrupt you by doing this, but I'm going to try and reset my camera a little bit.
Okay.
By bringing the white closer, and like my screen's gotten all dark for some reason. I think because I started pulling out the white paper, it's darkening, it's doing an auto adjust. It is what it is. That's fine. No one's looking at
It is what it is.
No one's looking at me anyway. They're just listening to. That is fantastic. So multiple things right off the bat. I took 6 pages of notes, and we're going on 7.
Sorry.
No, nothing wrong with that. This is how some discussions, or at least one in the past, has gone to 4.5 hours. So I'm always in for the marathon. I'm not going to keep you that long if you don't want to, and we may not need that much time, but and I didn't want to stop you either, because that's okay. So what am I going to say? Each experience with each dreamer is completely unique. So I have tried in the past to constrain people a bit to, okay, tell me one experience, and then we'll work our way backwards from that to look at common elements in other dreams. And so in the past, I might have tried to direct the process a little too much. And at least I'm looking at it like I'm undecided about it. I'm like, should I do that or not? And this time I decided, you've already done a lot of analysis on this yourself. You've kept the dream journal. You've got a highlight of the phenomenon itself where it's similar. So you've done actually a lot of that work for me if I just listen. And so as I said, each dreamer is training me. So I try and look forward, what am I getting out of this? What lessons should I learn about how to do this better? So definitely I like all of it. There's nothing wrong with that. And that's why I kept saying, okay, this is good. Oh, that's good. That's good. So I'm going to have to refer to my notes. Anyway, I always say the dreamer can't do this wrong. This is your, all the pressure's on me to make sense out of this stuff. So if we start writing down well, I've already done it, but I want to kind of dial it into. So you've definitely got this bear,
Mm-hmm.
and this bear is, I mean, we could conceptualize it as some kind of a spirit animal for you, in a sense, in the truest of senses. It is the embodiment of a concept, an idea, a piece of yourself that gives you guidance. It doesn't appear to be an enemy. It might hurt you, but it doesn't appear to be trying to destroy you. It's not a monster come to really kill you, even if it feels like that. Even if it was sniffing around under your shirt and like, is he gonna eat my liver? Is this the time when this? So it's a force that you feel compelled by.
Right.
Something inside of you that is sort of a compulsive, and we all have experiences like that. I love referencing the Greek gods. It's Aphrodite, goddess of love, sends her son Eros, shoots us with an arrow, and now we are involuntarily attracted to someone. That is kind of the common experience we have of our drives, our innate drives for seeking companionship or meaning or all kinds of different things. We feel a compulsion, and then how we express it is whether it's socially acceptable or whatnot. But sometimes we don't know whether to trust our own internal drives, or they feel so strong that they are conceptualized in our mind as some kind of a powerful, embodied as a powerful animal. So this is so there's very much relation to this creature being. I mean, maybe we could start with the idea of what are, if we did just some random free association. This is getting to the Jungian, Freudian side of things. Bear. You think of the word bear, what pops into your head? What are the qualities of a bear? What does a bear do? Was the essence of bearness? That kind of thing.
For me, a bear is strength, independence. Usually a bear kind of does its own thing. A sense of being untamed. A sense of, let me think about. I mean, I would say a little bit of in terms of danger. I mean, it's a bear after all. I mean, it is one of the apex predators in a forest or something. So, it also just kind of embodies, since it's wild, it's more of instinct in a way. Like it's more of animalistic. I don't want to say animalistic urges, but it's you can't really tame a bear. You can't. I mean, I guess there's bears in like circuses and things, but it's not. I don't really view that as actually being tameable. And so yeah, those are kind of the things that I would probably associate with a bear.
Yeah, that's kind of where I was going with this, and those are great things. So this, in some ways, I think we might, if we layer all that broader concept onto the imagery, this would be the part of yourself, the urge towards being strong and independent, untamed, unconstrained, master of your forest surroundings. There's not many things that hunt a bear in the forest. Wolves, maybe a large pack of wolves could take on a bear, but it would take all of them. So being very at home in that natural environment, like this is where I belong. It's the right fit for that kind of a thing. So if we look at it that way, I don't know if any thoughts come to mind about the meaning of the bear and why it needs to come to you and why it's serving as a guide. Either yes or no, but if any thoughts come to you.
I mean, I think that there's a lot of times where I do struggle with maybe imposter syndrome might be one of those things, especially with my career, especially with going out and doing things. I do have, I am a writer, so getting yourself out in that world, and my career is always one of those things where you do have to always kind of fight for your work. And, if you want to write it, become peer reviewed, or if you want to, do a grant or something, you're always trying to overcome other people's perceptions of your work and other people's kind of how they judge you in a way. And So it is kind of, sometimes you do kind of think like, am I as good as I should be? Or, should I be more strong, or should I be more, uh, freedom, and I don't care what other people think. And I really try to embody that, but sometimes it's hard, especially when I'm in an environment where a lot of my success does depend on other people's feedback. And, if I'm applying for a grant, other scientists in the fields or something, I mean, I'm kind of in their hands in terms of determining whether or not I get that grant, or, so.
Kind of a beggar on the street. Please, sir, may I have some tuppence?
Yeah, I mean, that's research in a nutshell.
So if we go back to that, to the first dream, you're swimming in a spring. So you're in a very idyllic setting for maybe what, so I would assume the way you phrased it is you enjoy nature and the forest. You enjoy the idea of swimming in a pure spring water, very relaxing. So this is a completely enjoyable recreational activity. And the bear doesn't want you to get out of the water. Now, did you have a sense you needed to go somewhere, or why it was time to get out of the water? Anything like that?
Just done. After a while, your skin gets pruny. You just, it's like, I'm done.
So you did
I'm
feel
good.
done. You weren't running from anything. You were just
No.
finished. You had taken in as much recreation as you cared to. And did you have a sense you were inclined to seek something else to do? What was the point of getting out of the water beyond leaving the water? I don't know if there was one, but
I don't think that there was one. Typically, I mean, it's no surprise. It would not be a surprise that, I would go out and, my dreams would occur in forest and nature, because that's just kind of my thing. It's what I love doing. Typically when I do that, I don't really have plans. It's just to go out and just be one with nature, and, walk barefoot in the woods type of thing,
Yeah, sure.
That's just something that you do that's what I do to revive myself. So I don't really have a lot of plans unless there's like a specific task. Like,
I was more trying to identify, was there or wasn't there something? Because if there was something specific, that would mean its own kind of thing. And the fact that it wasn't, we rule that out in a way, kind of differential diagnosis, house style. Well, it's not this. It's never lupus. Yes. So there's an interesting thing there. So you've got your maybe iconic representation of that driving force to be independent, strong, stand on your own, self-sufficient, all of these type of things. The idea of, what did I write down? A bit on the dangerous side, but that's not even, we'll get around to that idea too, because I think that's very, very relevant. But so if we describe it as what's happening, you're trying to, for whatever reason, you feel being done with a recreational time, but that strong independent side of you is pushing you back in, saying, stay in recreational activity mode or something. There was something about the dream happening at that time that, and I don't know if you remember when that was happening, what was going on in your life. Did you feel overwhelmed by work at that time, or?
I mean, I'm one of those people that kind of work hard and play hard, and sometimes I forget to play hard. And so, I mean, research is tough in terms of the hours that you might have to log or keep in order to, bacteria don't really care what time of the day it is or what day of the week it is. And so there are times where
they're doing their own thing.
They're doing their own thing. And so I do work long hours sometimes. Sometimes I work weeks without a day off. Sometimes, and then I have my writing, and even though it is recreational and pleasurable to me, it is a business. And then, I also have another business. And so I do a lot of things that I don't want, how I said this, I don't watch a lot of TV. I don't have like binge watching on the couch days a lot. So when I do that, I make sure that it counts, but I don't have a lot of it. So
gotcha. And these are other drives too, is like, no one looks at well, we do in some ways. Like we have a concept of the workaholic. We have a concept of the person who drives themselves too hard to the point of exhaustion, pushes past useful creativity into frustration and anger, and just, the scientist smashing his lab because he's, the 17 millionth failure. You're working too hard. Take a break. So this may have been your image of inner strength, your image of how to be your best self in some ways, this strong drive to take care of yourself, to do what is best for you, pushing you back into the water. And it's frustrating. Like, no, I want to work. And your other drives inside are going, you're going to take a break whether you want to or not. And I'm going to make it happen.
Gotcha.
Just get back in there. This is for your own good. I feel like the bear is that, in a sense, that side of yourself that's saying that, take care of yourself. This is for your own good. This is something you need. So if we put that kind of framework on the water dream, I mean, that kind of makes a little bit of sense. And then there's a whole evolution and this happens with recurring dreams too, is that sometimes they are exactly the same because we have no clue what's going on. And we keep hammering the precise images in a specific sequence over and over again, exact same dream until we get it. You seem to be pulling something out of these dreams that is meaningful, whether it's conscious or not, allowing them to evolve in a series where some of the icons change, but then the behaviors change. So you went from, it's not letting me out of the water. Okay, now next dream, I'm back in the water, and now there's an elephant fighting with the bear to pull me out. And so now we kind of look at, let's do the same thing with the elephant. What are some immediate loose associations that just come to mind when I shouldn't whistle into the microphone.
No, you're fine. Wow. Okay. I think I see where this is going. Okay.
What's happening? I love it. We had a moment.
Yeah. Intelligence, for sure. And the two things that jump out at me are intelligence and family. Because family, elephants and strength. Of course they're very strong, but those are like the three things that kind of scream in my head. The family. Elephants have almost matriarchal in a way, because they do have strong family groups, but they're usually by the matriarchs, and yeah.
Okay. So this may have been, the bear says, take care of yourself, stay in recreation mode. You need this, or at least that part of you. And very often our minds are in conflict between, I think these things are both important. How do I balance them? And later dreams with the circle and the half and half, and the destruction of the greenery, the generativity and the corruption or whatever. Fantastic archetypal. I mean, Jung would be like, we have at least 60, 70 sessions to go through for this one. Yeah. Oh, great stuff.
Chain you up on the couch in my office, and I'll be back.
I'll be writing another book. Yes. So now you've got this fight between this urge to care for yourself, and this urge to go into the forest, like the elephant's kind of pulling you, let's go this direction. It's another drive within yourself that isn't you. It is, but our drives are not us in that way. It's like we feel them. And again, with the Greek god conception, they used to say things like, I have anger. They don't say, I am angry. That, again, we're getting into that root of things. There used to be a concept that, well, I am not my feelings, I'm not my thoughts, and we've gotten away from that. Now we identify as what we think and feel, which is not the case. You can have a thought and hold it out in front of you and go, I just had that interesting thought. I don't know where it came from. I don't know why, but I don't have to agree or disagree with it. I can just look at it and see what it is. That's harder for some people to do. We've kind of lost that conception of how to deal with our experience, which hopefully is something we can bring back with the whole thing. I mean, that's something I'm looking towards accomplishing with some later books, is maybe encouraging more of that perspective. Yeah. So there's the experiencing you that is watching yourself have experiences, which is, I mean, that always happens. We stop, right? Well, that's also a thing where there's two types of people, broadly speaking, and this gets into the idea of why are the animals black and white as well. A lot of things are dichotomies. There are people that just typically experience and don't reflect on themselves as they are having an experience. And there's some of us that live entirely in third person mode and watch ourselves over our own shoulder. That's me. I am always painfully hyper aware of myself in circumstances. I don't always know what to do, but it's hard for me to just be present and experience, to be the experiencing thing without analyzing the experience. So in our dreams, sometimes this happens. And I think that's what you're doing. You're like, you are yourself, whatever the self is. You've got these conflicting urges. And now this one pulling you towards, yes, the bear isn't wrong that I need recreation, but the elephant wins ultimately. It has a stronger case. It's the stronger animal in this sense. I need to get out of the water. I do. Thank you, bear. You're looking out for me. You're not wrong, but this is not the right time. I've been in here long enough. And the elephant ultimately wins. And I don't remember where you went then. You did go into the forest then?
Well, the elephant started pushing me towards the forest. And of course, and so I'm like, wait a second, hang on. Like, the bear was pushy. Now you're pushy. Now stop this. I need to decide where I need to go. Like, so I start getting a little bit annoyed with the whole situation. Yeah. And I remember I'm like, I don't have time to process this. You are just telling me where to go. And that's why I was starting getting kind of frustrated, because it's like, hang on, let me think about this for a bit. It's not your decision. It's my decision.
Yeah.
And so that's when I started doing that.
And that's a very reasonable frustration to have, is like, I feel so driven by urges, even urges to do good things, maybe to help people or spend more time with my family. But the experience of a strong motivator, it also is the experience of not having time to reflect and choose. You feel so driven. And that can be like, there's nothing wrong with, say, spending time with family, but if you're doing it out of, say, guilt, this is the wrong motivator. You don't want to be driven to do something you'd rather not do because you feel bad. You want to be driven, you want to be pulled towards something you want to do because it makes you feel good in that sense. But sometimes we do things that are out of guilt or out of a sense of obligation, and that pressure to perform, we can recognize it as unpleasant and then still perform and then still say, sometimes you got to show up and do the thing because it's better than the alternative. I mean, what is it? Maybe you wake up one morning and it's your kid's birthday and you just don't feel like being around anyone, but you're not going to cancel the birthday because you do it for the kid, that kind of thing. So, what was the, I don't remember, you can just refresh I remember the ending of that was the elephant stopped pushing.
So
let you have a moment to think.
The bear got out of the water and started going and engaged the elephant. And so they had kind of like this, like I said, they didn't actually fight, but it was almost like a show of strength between the two of them.
And again, this is happening external to yourself. I forgot that. That's fantastic too. Is so the bear, and I forgot the whole thing of like, the elephant showed up because the bear was so insistent. The bear bit you. Yeah. The bear caused you pain and dragged you back into the water.
Yeah. And I was like, no, stop this.
Yeah. I need some, I will not be controlled by this either. And so the elephant pulled you out, at least got you on the bank, and then a confrontation begins. So this is, again, when we hold out two conflicting ideas in front of us and we let them fight it out. We let we hold those ideas in tension against one another, and we try to decide which one we want to win, which one we are going to choose. And it's interesting that you didn't represent it as, they didn't tear each other apart. They didn't destroy each other. There was just it's a very image or symbolic representation of that conflict of opposing drives. Well, I can only do one of these things immediately, and which one is it going to be? And there was never a resolution, or they ended up walking away from each other, or
the elephant was the one that just kind of shook its head, and then it started walking away towards the forest and left me with the bear. And that's when I turned to the bear and I'm like, well, now what? And that's when I woke up from that dream.
Gotcha.
So
the bear just kind of is. It doesn't say a lot of things. So this is very much, I'd say, a part of you that does not communicate in words, communicates in feelings and actions.
Okay.
Yeah. That kind of a thing. That's, it's not really a rational side of you in that sense.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that would make sense, because the bear is very much an animal, like in my head. Like, it's not personified. It's not gonna, start stealing picnic baskets or,
Right.
or anything like that. It's not cuddly. It is very much like a wild animal that I respect. I kind of always get this feeling of respect, but at the same time, I'm still I'm not comfortable with it. I'm a little bit like, can this thing turn on me at any moment, type of a thing. And so it's not like a cute, cuddly teddy bear at all.
Yeah. So and you mentioned before, just to kind of bring it back and tie it in, the idea of, sometimes you feel like you struggle with the imposter syndrome type of thing, and valuing your own accomplishments properly. The idea of self-doubt and balance is what I wrote down. I don't know if those were your words or mine, but I think we all do that to some degree. And for you, maybe it's a stronger concern. It's like, you seem like someone who is very, very much interested in doing the right thing. And I think, what is it? There's an old saying that, evil people don't ask whether they're doing the right thing. So it's an anxiety that only good people have, which is a blessing and a curse. And the curse is we get a lot of self-doubt. Did I handle that as well as I could have? What might I have done better? A lot of self-reflection and stuff like that. So I think definitely I was going somewhere with that. Maybe it was to just kind of segue us down onto the idea of the animals all being in black and white colors, but with spots of other colors. So the bear has, like, on his chest, a white splotch.
Yeah, he has a white splotch, and then the elephant had like dapples on its hind end.
Hind end, interesting. It wasn't the trunk. Yeah. It wasn't on his chest. No, it wasn't one ear and the other. It was on the hind end, which is very interesting.
Yeah, it was like I said, like an Appaloosa horse that has like the blanket of spots on its rump.
Yeah,
and then the raven had white wings, but the rest of it was black. So
yeah,
that
is interesting too. So why the black and white? And the first thing that comes to mind is yin yang in my head, which is also another circular thing. And the idea that each teardrop contains a spot of the other color. So we've got, these are all the black dark representations of things with a splotch of the white. And it seems to be, rather than the other way around, it wasn't a white animal with a black splotch. It was black animal with a white splotch. So there's something about how you conceptualize that black or darker or chaos side versus chaos and order. I don't know if the idea of the color black represents anything specific to you, or like pops into heads.
Not really. I don't necessarily think black means evil or anything, or darkness means anything bad. I'm one of those people that I think that good and bad are relative, depending on your situation. Like, even people, no one thinks themselves as the villain of their own story. They're always the hero, even though, subjectively they may not be on the right path or doing something that, society thinks is a good thing. So, in a weird sort of way, I kind of prefer nighttime sometimes, because I think that it's more like quiet and solace, and it gives me kind of, the world kind of slows down and kind of lets me to my thoughts. And so black kind of, maybe I'm kind of reaching here, but sure. And I'm saying kind of a lot, but
that's okay. These are vague concepts, and you can be uncertain about them. Yeah. We're talking it out. We haven't latched onto anything.
Exactly. And so it might represent something like that, maybe stillness or moments of reflection or quiet, just because it's a void. There's nothing there. There's nothing stimulating. There's nothing loud or anything. So maybe that might be darkness for me, as if I'm going to interpret it that way. But it's nothing evil or foreboding, for sure.
Yeah, and I definitely didn't think so. And the idea of what am I trying to say? Chaos isn't a bad thing. If we were to broadly conceptualize it as that, too much chaos is absolutely a bad thing, but chaos is just the essence of change itself, which let's go the dental route. If you have a infected tooth or a cavity and it hurts like hell, you would like to enter the chaos of getting that tooth drilled so that it stops hurting, and then a new order forms on the other side, being I am free from pain. Going from pain to no pain is an act of chaos, which then solidifies into a new order, and the circle remains unbroken, as they say. So there's nothing wrong with change. It's not like order good, chaos bad. It's like too much order also bad. Too much order would be you never get the tooth fixed, the pain never stops. That is a very consistent, rigid order. No bueno. And very contextual. Some things we don't want to change, going from alive to dead. We might prefer the continuation of the state of living versus the chaos of changing into a dead person. So all of these things, neither one's good or bad, but night, stillness, away from people, time for self-reflection. Maybe these are only animals you can be aware of in the right context. And so the context shows itself in their representations when you're in your ability to reflect the stillness away from the world slows down and people are absent of distractions and whatnot. That's when these things come forth, but they carry in essence, like the bear specifically. And it's probably interesting that it's on the chest, whatever that means for you. The first thing that comes to mind is, it's where our most vital organs, the heart and the lungs. It's where speaking of heart and lungs, she's gonna cough up a little hairball, I think.
Oh, that's okay.
Come on, boo boo. Let's pat you. I always worry about him. She's fine. She does this all the time, but like, what if
let me play the song of my people?
I catastrophize in my head. Like, oh no, you're gonna be okay, boo boo girl. There you go. We're just gonna pat her. All right, I'm gonna stop thinking about it. So what was I saying? So there's the splotch of white in the black. So even in these, let's say if we're getting away from the pressures of the day so we can reflect on the day, that's the dot. It's the dot as we carry that with us, even though we need to move into this other realm to see it better. It's like the dot stands out against the contrast of the background. So, and I was saying something about breathing and lungs and chest and heart, and bear heart stood out to my mind. I don't know if that feels right to you or makes sense, or because that's why maybe it would be on the chest.
And if it is in terms of bear versus elephant, I would think that an elephant is to me would be more associated with the mind and intellectualism, because elephants are very intelligent. Bear could be more heart based just because of the nature of the bear, where even though they're both wild animals, for me the bear seems like he acts more like on instinct and more of feelings than an elephant would. And I might be just projecting my own ideals on animals, but that's kind of where I would go with that.
Well, I think it's your projection that matters. I mean, that's what comes to mind. Sure. No, and I think it makes sense too, because those are very, whether or not it makes sense to me, it doesn't matter, but I think it does. And then the idea of, okay, so if the bear had the spot, why were the colors on the elephant's kind of rump? Why are the, what is, why not the trunk? Why not the ears? Why not, why not a what do they call it when like the half of a face? We got a cat like that. It's got half dark, half kind of calico on her face. Can't remember what.
Totally forgot. But yes, I know.
There's a name for it. Yeah. But that it's on the backside of the elephant. So it's actually, I don't know, when something is behind, I seem to think of it as the true, whereas the bear's chest might be pulling him forward, the white spot, the elephant's dapple,
whatever it is,
on its rear end might be pushing it towards something. I don't know if those modes of approach differ in your mind in some way, being pushed towards something versus being pulled towards something.
I'll have to think about that. Nothing comes out right now, but that doesn't mean that we may not discover something later. So
yeah, no, that's true. And then sometimes there's nowhere we can go. But what just kind of connected in my head is like sometimes we are pulled towards things that we feel pulled from our chest to things we feel attracted to or desirous of. And this is not, sexual in any way, of course. It could be. No. But the idea of we like a particular color. We feel, attracted to that color. Being pushed is, I would say, more of an intellectual experience. It is the experience of duty or obligation in some ways versus,
Mm-hmm.
things we do because we feel a responsibility versus an enthusiasm. Well, you can have a responsibility and an enthusiasm at the same time, but
Sure.
but that's kind of where I'm thinking these things might differ.
That
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, especially since I do often feel at war with more of my, I don't want to call it my intellectual side, but I do have to tap into more of a logical side, especially with my career and kind of just doing what's best for, well, I was about to say what's best for my family and everything, because,
Yeah.
I am kind of that pillar for them.
Mm-hmm.
And versus more of my heart side, which is more of like doesn't have as much structure, doesn't have, it's a little bit more chaotic, and
Yeah.
so that does make a lot of sense now that you said that, for sure.
Yeah, the dichotomy definitely is in the yin yang is so powerful because it has
Yeah.
such broad application to almost everything. Anytime there's a dichotomy, and it's heart and mind. Definitely, we get pulled
Hmm.
by what we think we should do and what we feel like we want to do. Very, very common experience. So maybe that explains that one. And then also, again, you're a little bit in third person mode, examining the experience of feeling these drives in conflict with one another, and your intellect says, okay, I see what's going on here. I understand. And it's look, I'm going to the forest. That's where I belong. That's where I
Sure.
think you should go. You make up your mind, because our drives and thoughts can't actually control us. We can choose to ignore them. We can say, I think this is the right thing to do, and I'm not going to do it. Now, most of us don't do that. We don't like the way that feels, or we don't like the results we get when we do that, but it is possible. And the bear also just kind of sits down and doesn't do anything either. And you're looking at them
No,
both like, what the hell am I supposed to do now?
yeah, exactly. That's
Yeah.
exactly how it is. It's like, well, now what do I do?
Yeah.
It's because I don't really understand my fate with the bear. When the elephant leaves, like I don't have access to the elephant anymore, so I'm just stuck with this bear, who just kind of had kind of a traumatic sort of interaction with him, and and so I'm just kind of like, well, okay, well, now what are we gonna do? What's the next step?
But also, it's very interesting. The bear didn't take that opportunity to say, ha ha, now you're alone. I got you. I'm going to drag you back into the water. He just says, you're out of the water now. You got it. Now you got to make a choice. And you woke up without, because I think in that moment in your mind, you had an idea of the problem, but you didn't have a solution to tell yourself. You hadn't made a choice yet. But
Gotcha.
sometimes that's what our dreams do. They just allow us to see the problem more clearly. And that's kind of step one. Step one, there is a problem. Here's what it looks like. Here's the things that might work. And what are you going to do about it? What do you implement, and how is that going to resolve it? I mean, it's multiple steps to problem solving. I haven't diagrammed that in a long time. I should look at that. There's like a step-by-step thing, but that's kind of the progression you have to go through. You can't skip a step. Some of us do. Actually, some of us intuitively know there's a problem. We know what it is, and we do something about it. And that actually might have happened from this dream. Sometimes just, okay, I tell people to sleep on it, not because I'll give it some time, but literally sleep on it, and your brain will process these things. You'll wake up the next morning not remembering a dream, but you've got an answer. You don't know how you got to that answer. You just know. And then sometimes you can work backwards and say, now that I'm at the solution, I can figure out why that makes sense to me. But getting there and being certain about it, it happened completely subconsciously. And that's why sometimes we got to question those and say, let me look at this twice and make sure. But for you, it seemed to have been framing that and seeing it play itself out, and in that stark imagery, let you put that to bed, because then the nature of the dream changed again. You weren't back in the water having this conflict.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't have another experience of the elephant and the bear fighting each other. You got the message from that, whatever it was, whether you got it consciously or not. And then what was the next one? It was the elephant.
One was about kind of next several dreams that I had was more of the bear trying to herd me into a specific location, but it always felt like nothing was happening. And so the next dream that I spoke about was when he ended up herding me to that
chapel.
Yeah, chapel.
Yes.
The chapel.
That's right. Yeah. So now the bear is actually, he didn't try to push you back into the water. He came with you into the woods and said, okay, you're going into the woods. I'll come with you. Let me help you find what you're looking for in the woods.
Yeah.
Very interesting thing. So in a way, let's see, you haven't tamed the bear. The bear cannot be tamed. It is what it is, but it isn't always going to fight you. I think once it's one of those things where like you accept the bear for what it is, and then it comes with you on your journey into the forest. But it's still good. Go ahead.
But it has a specific path that it wants me to go.
That's right.
But it only kind of quote unquote punishes me if I choose the wrong path to take. Like if I step in the right way, then it will growl at me, or it will swipe at me, or it will like body check me to like move somewhere else. And I never get an indication I'm doing the right thing. I'm only getting an indication I'm doing the wrong thing. Yeah. And so how I know that I'm going and making progress is that there is no negative consequence, I guess is the best way to put it.
And I think, I don't know if I just thought this or we said it, but a bear, it very well could have been a talking bear in your dreams, but I don't think it was that, or I think it was not that specifically, because this side of yourself that this drive doesn't, it's not a verbal thing. It's not something you can put into words. It's a feeling you have. So feelings don't express themselves verbally. They express themselves in this feels good when I do it, or it feels bad when I do it. So there's only kind of a visceral or physical, tactile, emotional sense of decision making when you're dealing with the physical side of things. It is an interesting concept that the bear doesn't make a goofy expression and its tongue loll out as a reward for picking the good thing. It's simply neutral in a way, or uninvolved. It only hurts you, or you only feel. So there's something going on maybe in your personal life or whatever, or just in your experience of the world, where choosing to indulge the side of yourself that needs recreation, that needs self-care in a way, doesn't feel as good as it feels bad when you don't do it. Something going on there. I don't know if you can explain that a little bit.
Yeah, you kind of hit the nail on the head. That's very surprising. I am kind of wired in such a way where I don't take time to bask in my accomplishments. I don't really rest on my heels. I'm one of those people where if I accomplish a goal, then I'm like, okay, well that's done. Now what's the next one? And so I've always had a problem with the reward aspect of accomplishing things. To me, it's like that's just a stair step. That's not the end goal. So let's just keep going. And then looking back, it's like, wow, I just did like 20 different things and I didn't even say good job, yay, and so maybe that's probably what it is that I got no reward for understanding or doing the right thing, because I don't even reward myself that much. I always say, what's the next obstacle to climb, or what's the next thing do I need to overcome?
For sure.
And so that's very, wow, that's cool.
You're having a moment. You feel it. I love that. I love that. That's honestly, that's how we know we're doing this right. We're like, whoa, yeah. Let me tell you why. I very much feel the same way, and it's sometimes what I try not to do is say, well, here's what I would think about that, but sometimes they do overlap. So I think if I could explain it this way, it's like I take it for granted when I do the right thing. I'm like, that's just default. That's what I should be doing. That's not even anything to celebrate. I don't celebrate myself either. This is an accomplishment. I'm doing this and pat myself on the back. That feels very awkward and goofy. I actually don't want praise from people. It's also a very goofy thing of like, if I do the right thing, just ignore it. And if you say nothing, that will be my confirmation. If I've done something wrong, let me know. So I only invite negative feedback. I don't invite positive feedback from other people. So, so there's a bit of a missing or a missing side to it, a bit of an imbalance with that of like, if you're going to put value in negative feedback, in a here's a corrective advice, you should put equal value in celebrating getting it correct and not minimize that by thinking of it as just neutral. Things are neutral or bad. No, things are good or bad. And allowing yourself to feel that. Yeah, that's where I would go with it. I don't know if that describes your experience or if it's something different.
That kind of hit the nail on the head. Like, I'm kind of surprised by that. And
well,
it takes me a lot. It takes a lot for me to go like, oh yeah, okay,
those
yeah,
moments of
definitely.
epiphany. Yeah, that's I feel like I've described it this way before. I'm a bit of a tuning fork, and if I hit the right frequency, you start to resonate with that, and that's when we know we got something. Okay, now all of this in context of the bear is pushing you towards a chapel in a clearing. Mm-hmm. So there's, what is a chapel? It could be chapel marriage comes to mind, but it's also a smaller church. In a sense, it's not it's not a mega church. It's not a cathedral. It's not overwhelming. It's this cute little, cottage in the woods type of chapel. It's a very approachable, religious iconography or spiritual sense of something. But it feels old. So it's like it's small and approachable, but it has all the gravitas of what it actually is. It's been there a while. It's so, I mean, I would say it stands out for the idea of, respecting an ancient tradition in a sense. I don't know what your religious or spiritual persuasion is. A Christian, not.
Oh yeah, I'm a Christian. I mean, well, yeah, I would say so for sure. I think that there's higher power out there. I was raised Christian, so that's just how I interpret the higher power. Me personally, I feel like, because a lot of people are like, well, how can you be a scientist and think of a higher power? But I think that faith and our understanding of that faith kind of is on its own separate sphere. Everyone talks about the Big Bang Theory, and I'm like, okay, well, who started that spark? Type of a thing. And until we understand that, and we don't know, then I feel like that can be totally faith-based.
Oh yeah.
So, so I am that, but I'm not really my view of spirituality is way more personal. I'm not really a churchy person, because I'm just an introvert, and I going out and going to service and things is just a little bit overwhelming for me. But I am spiritual, and I do believe in a higher power. And in my case, that higher power is based on the Christian faith. So that's kind of where I am.
Yeah, good deal. Well, it would mean, so the chapel in the woods would maybe mean something different to a pure atheist or a pagan. It would say, well, okay, maybe this is conquering territory by the enemy. If you're specifically a pagan worshiping the old ways, they drove us druids out, But for you, it's like it represents the broad framework you've grown up with, something that you respect as a long-standing thing of importance. But again, I think it was very important that it was small, approachable. It's like your idea is not the mega church. It's not being in a sea of worshipers caught up in something. It's more of a personal, contained, small experience for you. So the bear's kind of guiding you in that direction, or at least not telling you you're making a mistake by approaching it. It's by negative feedback has brought you to the place where you're like, there's something about this I need to look at or experience. So you're maybe considering broadly your concept of spirituality and how it fits into your understanding. And the bear comes in with you. And what are they doing in there? They're getting ready for some kind of a performance, but it's specifically an entertainment-oriented, music-oriented performance.
In my head, I thought it was like a rock concert or something, because there were more like modern day instruments and things there. It wasn't like praise and worship, but unless, I don't know, praise and worship uses fog machines and things, but it was more like,
maybe they're trying something new.
You never know.
Yeah, they could be trying something new. Or there's also that concept of, we look at it and go, is this out of place here? Like, is this really what it should be? Or they're trying to keep up with the times or make it a more interesting experience for people. Hey, if you can get the message across that way, is there really anything wrong with it? Maybe it feels a little goofy. I don't know. There's some people who are like, church should be the original Latin mass, and you should struggle to learn it and to understand why that's important. And there should be the person at the front, and he's teaching lessons. And then there's the other side of it where spirituality can be a little more like a rock concert. You're going to feel something for the right reason. It's going to help build community. I don't know that I have a strong opinion on either side of that. So I'm coming from it from a broadly agnostic side of things, more of a an understanding of the value of mythology and storytelling. So I would refer to it, say, as the Christian mythology. And within that, though, saying whether or not it actually happened, it is still real and true. That's I have a great respect. I think the Greek and Norse gods, all of these things were absolutely real human experiences, just the way we conceptualized it. And that's the difference between me and, say, an actual Christian, someone who says, yes, Jesus lived. Yes, he was the Son of God. Yes, he is my Lord and Savior. You have to accept him into your heart. Very specific understanding. Nothing wrong with it. Not my path. That's, but I respect that greatly. And I understand what that means to people. Yeah.
I mean, for me, I always like to be challenged. So I'm okay with having, discussions about faith or religion or anything. I mean, I don't. The path that you choose is what you choose for you, and I'm not here to tell you otherwise. So
for sure.
So I respect all religions. I respect because I can maybe get a new insight. Because to me, I can't evolve unless I'm not challenged, and so I like to feel that kind of feeling of discomfort and that feeling of me questioning things, because then I can think about them and then I can make my own decisions. So
for sure. Yeah. And
this is,
sure. And none of this is by any way of confrontation. We're just talking about ideas. Yeah. Well, but it also, I think where I was going with that is it broadly highlights, if I were to rely on my own understanding, I would get a different understanding of that imagery. So I need to know where you're coming from, and what's important to you, because it doesn't matter what I think. None of these answers are in my head. And the bear comes in with you and you're sitting in the pews, maybe because you don't participate, you don't offer to help, or they don't have a job for you. I mean, how do you conceptualize that?
They said, because I went in there, and they're like, what are you doing here? And I'm like, well, I don't know what I'm doing here because the bear hasn't told me. And he's like, well, are you here for the show? And I'm like, sure. Yeah, I'm here for the show. And he's like, well, you're early. I'm like, oh. I'm like, well, can I just wait? And he's like, yeah, I guess that's okay. And I'm like, oh, okay. And so I'm waiting for the show to start, but I don't know the nature of the show. I don't know what it is. I don't know anything. I'm just chilling out. And then that's when I'm sitting on the pew and just waiting.
Gotcha. So okay. So that whole thing, and I'm getting all kinds of ideas from that. So if the bear represents not just recreation as such, but more of self-care, more of personal growth, maybe even, it's guided you to this place where so there's a side of you or a piece of you, this kind of self-care, personal growth side that is guided you towards, well, maybe it's the feeling that you're going to find something of value in this chapel, that this is something you need, or the bear side of you thinks you need. And what you're realizing is that maybe you're not ready for it, or you are there too early. Whatever you're going to approach is coming, but it isn't here yet. So you're in the right place a little too soon. You're early for the show, in a sense. Whatever you're going to learn about it along that journey, but maybe what you needed to see was and waiting for it is boring. Waiting for it to start, and you get like, oh, might as well take a nap. Or we get a kind of involuntary drowsiness when things are boring. Like, someone's just going on and on and on, and we're like, oh, it's fascinating. No offense to any of my previous guests if I've yawned. That's not you. That does happen sometimes, but that's never what that was. These are always fascinating. Sometimes I'm just exhausted, but this was an actual, real imaginary drowsiness. And the bear puts his head in your lap. He's like, it becomes more of a, it doesn't feel like he's comforting. It feels like he's endorsing your feelings at the moment. Like, you're drowsy. Yeah, maybe. I'm drowsy too. This is, he's recognizing, yes, this is boring. Waiting for spiritual epiphany to hit us it's not it's not the most entertaining of things. It's not very exciting sometimes. But if we look at it kind of in that direction, around that time, were you considering spiritual matters, or like, should I start going to church again? Should I start reading the Bible again?
Well,
do I need some contextual meaning for my life?
Yeah, no, you did. I'm kind of, I guess I should go ahead and say this. So I was going to say it a little bit earlier and then we got gone, but actually my my mom is having some health problems, and so and it's caused me to kind of have a crisis of faith, because typically I'm okay. Like I know I know bad things happen, and a lot of people ask, well, why God, why does God allow bad things to happen? And for me, it's because for most of the case, we are granted our free will. And sometimes people make the wrong decisions and that impacts other people, or you make the wrong decision. But we have to have that free will in order to have, truly give our hearts over and have faith. And, it's the whole part of it. And so unfortunately, what's affecting my mom, it's like it just happened, nobody has control over it. Nobody has any of that. And so it's really hard to kind of have that sense of faith when something bad is happening to somebody that you love and there's nothing you can do about it. And it's nobody's fault. And so it's like, well, how can that exist? And so as she's getting worse is when I'm struggling a little bit more with that, for sure. So I'm sure that put everything in the context, and I was like, am I going to start crying when I talk about this? So I wasn't going to go into it, but I think I can talk about it.
It's actually pretty common. A lot of people do. Well, number one, we all would wish to have the, what is it called? I guess patience of Job. We all want to look at this and suffer and say, it doesn't change a damn thing. I still feel exactly the same way. That's hard. That is extremely, that's the most difficult thing. And something popped into my head while you're explaining, and I think it's fantastic. The question that you may have been asking yourself, is my Christianity, my expression is saying I am a Christian or one of the faithful, is it just for show? Is there substance to this, or am I putting on an act? You're here for the show. So some of us think of it that way, of like, this is all for appearance sake. So you may have been questioning that yourself. Like, am I taking this seriously? Is this, now that my self-care-ish side, my heart is driving me towards this church, am I taking this seriously? Is this just for show? Am I doing, is this gonna be what I need? Am I going to get what I need out of this experience? And that's a tough question too, because it may not feel like it at the time. It may be exactly what we need. It may be the best we can do, and it may feel miserable anyway. And it's only looking back on it, we say, I needed that. I don't think I could have gotten through it without it, even if I was in doubt and struggling the entire time. So it would have gone worse were I doing that some other way somewhere else. So there might be some, and again, you wake up, you don't get an answer at that time. You don't get an answer. Yeah. You left it, but you formulated the question, and then you moved on to another dream. You didn't go back to that same dream. Whatever it was, something clicked for you, and you made a bit of a decision. Did anything change for you after that? Like after that dream, did you start behaviorally doing something different or thinking about the problem differently? Something may or may not stand out.
I have to see because this is over the past year. That was about I think it was probably about 6 months ago, which been about January. I really have to go back and look and think about it, to be perfectly honest. So
that's fine. If something immediately popped into mind, we would talk about it. But at least, I mean, that specific dream didn't repeat, and sometimes they do. But then you moved on to another one. So many. Nice sequence. It's fun to take these one at a time. Then the dream with the
goo and the black stuff.
Yeah. So that's fascinating too. So I kind of expected another animal to come out. I think you said a tail, and it was kind of a tail-like thing that needed to be, and it turned out it was more of like, I don't know if you ever, I don't want to put this in your head, but have you ever seen a horsehair worm? You know what that is?
No.
Fair enough.
I've heard botflies. Is that the same thing?
Well, these are more like parasites that affect animals and insects in the wild, and it's basically a worm that looks like a long black hair. It's
Okay.
kind of
I
thin, and
yeah.
if you
Mhm.
ever there's these critters. I think they call them Jerusalem crickets. It's like a giant orange, fat-bodied bug, and they look like a cricket, but they kind of crawl. They don't really hop,
Yeah.
and they're ugly as sin. And I crushed one once, and this worm came out of its abdomen. It was infected with a
Ooh,
parasite living in its abdomen. Maybe it had no effect. I mean, I don't even know that insects can feel pains, but it's a creepy thing, and
yeah.
they can get into people, and it's a thing. It's like rare. I mean, there's a reason you've never
Sure,
heard of it.
sure.
It's not something we usually run across in civilization, but it had that feeling of that to me. But it's felt more of a fibrous goo to you, so it wasn't a living entity exactly.
I mean, not to get gross, but have you ever like unplugged a drain in your bathroom that has too much hair in it, and you have
Oh
to?
yeah,
Yeah, it looked kind of like
and there's
that,
some kind
you
of like
know,
gray mush quality to it, but stringy.
very,
Yeah,
very moist. It was just not. It was just not good.
for sure. Yeah,
It was
and
gross.
so you've got and again, it's in this it's not coming out of your chest as much, which is heart and lungs type of thing. It's more coming out
Hmm.
of stomach or middle of the abdomen. It's above the belly button and
Yeah,
below the rib cage. So it's very centralized around, I don't know, I think that's where our stomach is, but not like but then the intestines are below that. And that's what most of our
sure.
abdomen is like. Actually, our I think our stomach is even like right underneath our sternum or something. That's why when we get full, it's a little hard to breathe because it's actually
Yeah,
above our diaphragm, I think. If I've got that correctly. I think so.
I think it's diaphragm then stomach. The
Oh,
liver's in there too.
something like that.
Like
Yeah,
just
yeah.
yeah,
And that's
it's all
yeah.
blood. So
Yeah,
yeah.
for sure. So like stomach, liver, and a lot of the food processing area, I guess, is kind of a thing to it. Um, so you've got this thing that is inside of you and it's poking out. So, but first there's okay. How did you have that experience? You had a feeling. You
Mhm.
no, wait a minute. You could
It
feel
started.
you felt something was wrong before the bear started sniffing.
Yeah,
Okay, so
yeah, yeah. Yeah. So I was hunting for morel mushrooms, and
oh, that's
I just
right.
started having this pain. I'm like, what is going on? You know, and so I'm like, it's fine, no big deal, you know. And then it just starts getting worse and worse and worse until it totally incapacitates me. And that's when I saw the raven up in the trees, and I was like, "Can you like help me?" And the raven's like, "What do you want me to do? I'm a freaking raven, you know." And so he flies off, and
That's
then
right.
that's when the bear comes out of the woods.
I didn't go to the right
And
page. There was a whole intro to
yeah,
that
no
type of thing.
problem.
Yeah, yeah, midsection of the belly, kind of an indigestion type of pain, worsens. You double over onto the ground, and you feel like this is so painful, I might die. And then yeah, and then the raven. So
Yeah.
we've got the bears, kind of your heart, maybe, and the elephant, maybe the
Oh,
brain or intellect. The raven is interesting. What is the aspect of the raven? It's kind of like I mean, classic archetype of the trickster in different mythologies. Bad omens sometimes. I mean, especially people who read fantasy books might say, "Oh, a raven is they
yeah.
show up when things are wrong. When there's a battlefield full of dead people, they come and peck out the eyes." You know, so I don't know if that we're leaning in that direction or if something else feels right to you.
For me, a raven is more of, how do I explain this? Um, so okay, so let's do uh let's do kind of D&D terms here. So for
Sure.
me, elephant is more of the intelligence aspect. It's things that you learn, it's things that you can read in a book, you know, it's knowledge. While a raven for me is more of wisdom. So it's more of the puzzle solving, more street smarts, more learning by experience in a way, if that makes sense. Um, to me, a raven kind of uses a bunch of tools to like figure things out. I mean, they're very intelligent, but
Yeah.
they're different intelligent than an elephant.
Yeah.
If that makes
That
sense.
is the first thing that popped into my head too. Is like, okay, birds are smart of that kind. And I thought
Yeah,
that too, but yeah, different. So I'm glad you said exactly what I was thinking. More of a wisdom type of thing. So
yeah,
you looked to your wisdom, your own understanding of yourself in context, your own experience, the what you've learned through experience, and your experience is going, this is a new one on me. This is something I've never dealt with before. What do you want? Sorry, can't help you. And then does he actually fly away? He doesn't just stand there and watch you?
He flies away.
He's like,
just like
my job here is done.
yeah.
Yes, I let
It's
you
like,
know.
well, can't help you.
Right. I let you know I am useless. Good day. But the bear stays. So, and the elephant didn't show up too. So this is not a problem that can be solved by intellect or by wisdom necessarily. This is a problem you're going to have to feel your way out of in some ways. So the bear, you're really in touch with this bear. This bear is probably the part of yourself you're closest to in a way, but, struggle with the most in some ways as well. And it's one of those things where it's like you can, an old enemy, right? You know, in a way, like an enemy so old that you're so grown, so accustomed to them, but really they're not acting against you. It's kind of, sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't, you know.
And that's really kind of funny that you're saying that, because I'm not as good with feelings. For me, my coping mechanism is to kind of put those feelings in a box, and then I'm like, okay, how do I logically solve this problem? How, I can become in crisis. Especially, the last year and a half with my mom and everything, in crisis, like I can't feel things because I need to solve issues in order to make her life more comfortable and my family's life more comfortable. And so it kind of, I wrestle with my emotions a lot more, and sometimes I just put them in a box, and it's like, no, we can't deal with this right now. I need to save, I need to save the world, and you can't do that when you're being emotional.
It's true.
And so that is probably definitely something that I struggle with, for sure. Yeah. Especially now.
And for sure, our emotions are a part of us. Our thoughts are a part of us. They are not us, but they are a part of us. And it's a part of us that is stronger or not, depending on the person, and that we struggle with more or less. Some people are really in tune with their feelings, and they're just like, this is what it is. These are my feelings. And then they do whatever they want with it, but they're more in tune with that and accepting of it and perfectly content to be guided by it. Some of us are in our mind too much on the rational side of things and like not as comfortable with emotional stuff, where like me, legit autistic, someone's normal emotional response and mine down here. It's like, I have to conceptualize what it feels like for other people, because I don't feel that intensity of emotion. I think I'm like a 11 out of 80 on the emotional resonance scale. I'm like a way down there. And that doesn't mean I can't laugh and smile and I don't enjoy helping people, but
sure,
I can only imagine how overwhelming emotions must be for other people. And I'm just shocked that they can do anything. It's like, isn't it crippling? And maybe it is. Maybe I'm happy I don't have it as much, but anyway.
Yeah, I agree.
Long story short on that. So this bear is, and it's a funny thing of like, when there's a piece of us that is important to us, not just we feel it is important, but like it is necessary to us. It is a necessary component of being human to have these experiences, and we can't be rid of it. The bear will never go away. The bear might transform into something else, or he may stop showing up in dreams because you've integrated that. I mean, we might think of this as shadow work, what we're doing here, integrating the shadow side of yourself, the unknown part, the part we're not proud of in some ways. Like us intellectual types want to be proud of our rational decision making. We don't want to be proud of being ruled by our emotions. We're more on the stoic side of ethical value on that side of things. Like some other people are like, I'm perfectly fine being emotional, and I know when I feel good, I made the right decision and I don't question it. Fair enough. So that works for a lot of people. So long story short on this, like why the bear? I mean, we're getting so much good understanding of that. And in this case, the bear also is acting as, so when we say it's a side of ourselves that is necessary, it serves a useful purpose. It's something we have to have. So it has to be in its proper context and whatnot. So you are in a crisis. You are having this pain centered there may be some, it makes me think of the chakra things. I don't know what the stomach chakra is, but it's related to something.
I'm not as familiar with that, but I did kind of think of that. I also, when I woke up, the first thought I thought was like, okay, did I just dream? Maybe I was having some indigestion or something.
Always possible.
But then when I woke up, I was like, I didn't feel anything. Like I didn't feel nauseated or sick or anything like that. So I was trying to kind of assess something that's a little bit more logical, and then I was
Yeah.
like, but I feel fine.
Yeah.
So I didn't know, but I did kind of think, well, maybe that's a chakra thing. Maybe. I
Yeah.
don't know.
I was definitely getting, I'm glad you reminded me. I thought of that and I forgot, and we were going to get around to it. But the idea of, did you wake up with stomach pain? If you did,
No.
that's a now that doesn't mean that the entire dream could be dismissed because, oh, we found the reason. Of course, you
Sure.
had an upset stomach, therefore you dreamed about having an upset stomach. Oh, okay, fair enough, but why that? Why in that form? Why this black goo that needed to be pulled out by the bear? The bear is there to take care of you, to guide you in its own gruff and forceful, bitey manner sometimes, but it's not, it doesn't appear to be his purpose is not to destroy you. He's not a monster there to kill you. He's trying to, it's a piece of yourself you can't be rid of. So he comes sniffing along, and you're like, wait a minute, is this dangerous? So there's something about allowing your emotions to approach your crisis that you're suddenly doubtful. Should I let this happen? And then the realization, I can't actually stop it. The emotions are coming in. They're going to happen. And they latch on to this source of pain that you didn't identify until your emotions found it. Like your emotions lifted the shirt for you to be able to see, oh, it's this black tail looking thing wiggling there. And your reaction to that was disgust or get it out of me, or
It was more like, oh my gosh, what the F is that? It's like,
seeing
it
something.
was
Yeah.
very disarming, very just
Oh
like,
yeah.
oh my gosh.
No, for
Yeah.
sure. That's and that's a very natural reaction. If we lifted our shirt and saw something sprouting out of us, wiggling around that wasn't supposed to be there, that would be horrifying. That's a nightmare all on its own.
Yeah.
But so the bear, this side of you that represents something useful and important, the emotional side, the heart side, leaning into that self-care side, that kind of thing, does its job. It's actually, this is what the kind of thing it's there to do. It takes upon itself the task of removing this thing, but not only that, letting itself get covered. It's like it's going to absorb what's wrong with you to the point of damaging itself, letting itself be conquered or contaminated, or it's not.
Yeah.
What am I trying to say? It's not like, ew, that's nasty, I'm not going anywhere near it. It's like, I'll get dirty if I have to. This is what I'm here for. This is my job. I'm going to stop there and let you kind of comment on that idea. If you had any thoughts.
No, I do think that that's a very insightful way of looking at it, for sure. And right now it's giving me a lot to process with myself, and I'm kind of a thinker, I'm a processor. So sometimes I need to just kind of sit down and just be like, okay, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're definitely kind of, and sometimes I feel like in certain situations I almost feel too much, and so it's easier for me to try to stop myself before that happens. And then that's when the logical side kind of kicks in, and it's like, okay, hang on, you're you're more like a runaway train. Let's stop. Let's ignore that for now, and let's try to solve your problem logically so you're not so wrapped up in how you feel about things. And so I kind of am more of avoiding emotion more than anything.
Sure. Yeah, no, I get that too. And a lot of people do that self-protectively. And then on the opposite side, some people avoid rational thought self-protectively. They live in their emotions maybe too much, and just as much as some people don't live in their emotions enough. So there's something symbolic of a process for you going on in this, is that when you have maybe even a physical pain or something represented as serious as a physical pain of excruciating nature, your emotions are going to come in whether you want to or not. They're
Right.
going to nose under the shirt. They're they're going to do what they're supposed to do, which is take upon themselves the task of processing or dealing with this unpleasant thing that just seems to be endlessly sprouting. There's no end to the pain. There's no end to the cause of the pain. But at some point, the bear does pull it all out and ends up almost cocooned in this thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then you had a choice to make. You could have left the bear cocooned and walked away. You could have said, I'm going to let the bear die. But you actually came to the bear's rescue and said, well, I'm going to get a stick and pry this stuff off of it. That is its own powerful thing of like, okay, my emotions, maybe my processing this something emotionally saved me, but I can't, but it's it's not okay to leave it in that state. You can't leave yourself, your emotional side, covered in the problem. You can't let that, it's like a corruption of the emotional side of yourself, like leaving it like that. I don't know if you want to say something about that briefly.
No, I think that that's a good idea because uh, I do try to. Well, I'm not very good at it, but I do try to not leave myself in a state where I haven't dealt with my feelings in a way. Even though it's hard for me, I do try to take time to be like, okay, let's sort yourself out. And it's typically like after a crisis or after something very stressful or something, there's always like a day or two where I'm just like, okay, I need a break.
Yeah.
And I do kind of try to do like some sort of like meditation or deep breathing or something just to kind of untangle my thoughts and my feelings and kind of sort that out, because I know that I can't be at my best if I'm feeling that way with a lot of unresolved tension from my feelings.
Yeah.
Feelings kind of exhaust me.
Yeah.
That sounds kind of weird, but having big giant emotional responses are very tiring for me. Like it just wipes my energy out, wipes my drive out. So I try not to let it get to that point. And so I do take time to try to logically kind of untease and untangle what I'm feeling and kind of get that back into order. And then I'm like, okay, now I'm ready to get back in the game, so.
Yeah, for sure. I think there's a wonderful imagistic, I'm saying, visual display of that kind of concept. Like when there's a serious problem, your emotional side might be engaged. And in this case, it was to deal with the problem. But in so doing, the emotional side becomes covered in the problem to the point where if you don't do something to take care of you have to take care of your own emotional side to keep it functional. You can't leave it in that corrupted state, or it's not going to serve its purpose anymore. And that's something, at least I think internally, you recognize it needs to be there. As much as this pushy bear is annoying, I really can't live without him. It's a part of me that I can't get rid of it, or it would be bad if I tried. So you come to your own emotional side's rescue and act to, okay, let's clean it off. Let's get this stuff detached from it. It served its purpose. I'm not going to let it suffer for that or be destroyed by that process. That's fantastic. I love that.
Awesome.
Right? Yeah. And the idea, I love that idea of at the end, this, there's a tugging and finally the last bit of it comes out with a pop, with a jerk, we finally reached the roots. Yeah. It's almost like, I don't know, it's squeezing a pimple the wrong way, but sometimes you do. And there's I don't know if you like those pimple popper videos or the cyst removal videos.
Sure. I'm not, it doesn't gross me out, but it doesn't do anything that I don't get that positive feedback from watching that stuff that some people do.
I do. I love that. I'm like, what's in there? And then you squeeze it and all this stuff comes out. I'm like, oh, that's amazing. That's just me. Anyway, I wouldn't have been surprised if that was your kind of thing, but this was a different experience for you. So yeah, that's okay. And you grab a stick to wedge it off. I just wondered if there was anything else. Oh, and you were both exhausted by the end of it. You lay down with him and you apologize. He kind of huffs as if,
he's like, what? He huffs. Like, like a sigh, what am I going to do with you? Like, it's almost like you're a hot mess. You know what I mean? It's just like, I've been trying to, do my bare duties, and it's like you keep fighting. It was more of like a frustration, but
you're not making this easy on me.
Yeah, exactly. But I'm stuck. It's like I'm stuck with you, but it's like, come on now, help me out here.
I think that's a great way to conceptualize some of our shadow side. And again, shadow doesn't mean, just like black doesn't mean evil, or darkness isn't bad, that kind of a thing. But the shadow side it's not even things where it's not a moral category. It's not, we're in the light or in the shadow and we need to pull everything into the light. It's integrating the shadow. It's saying those things I'm not comfortable with praise. That's on my shadow side. When I get praised and I feel uncomfortable and I'm like, eek, don't do that. I make the face. Yeah. Grimace.
I'm the same way.
that's just my shadow side. So again, with this emotional thing, it's integrating it too. And this is your shadow side going, I'm not going anywhere. You got to deal with me. I'm here for you. But this is exhausting. And then you wake up. That's a fantastic representation of like exactly what's happening in most of us, across all kinds of things. Now we get to the last one, which is, I mean, this is a beautiful evolution of your journey. How long have you been having these dreams over the past two?
Or probably the past year, maybe year and a half at most. It's probably like a year and about 2 months or so.
I think this is all showing a whole
progression
story arc of like personal growth and understanding of the different components of yourself and how you understand them and how they interact with the world and how they support you and the challenges they present. It's great. And this, I think it's culminating in a way with this dream about 2 weeks ago, you said, and you've got
about 2 weeks ago was my last one. And that was, and these dreams, I guess I forgot to mention, but I've had dreams, but these dreams are the most sensory for me. Like the colors are crisp and the imagery is just completely there. There's very little like fuzzy moments, and it's almost like I'm watching a movie in a way. And I've never really had too many dreams where I can like smell things or hear things, but I can in these dreams. And so they're just very, very crystal clear. And the last one, like this one that I just had, just kind of just left a very standing impression on me.
Yeah.
And so that's why I wanted to talk about it, because I don't know, so for some reason I feel like that it does have a big thing of importance. So
yeah, for sure. Well, I think all of this has been fantastically important, but especially this last one, because it's in some ways it's all been building up to this, or we couldn't have gotten to this one without walking that path first.
Sure.
What was I going to say? Oh, so I'm fascinated by the whole realm of things. So I have a theory that seems to be true. Dreams self-select for importance. If you remember it and it feels important, it probably is. Now, that doesn't mean we remember all dreams that are important or that we're guaranteed to have a string of dreams that feel so vivid and important like you did. So it can be a tough thing for me to say remotely that I actually understand what's going on here. Like why these dreams, why it was, let's see, you could have had many, many more dreams that you don't remember that have very similar themes. Sure. And that's entirely possible or not. We have no evidence of it. It's pure speculation. So I can't say that, but why, what am I trying to formulate the question? Okay, so another theory I have is that we have depths of sleep is a good way to, and I think, why don't I remember my dreams? Why do I most often wake up not remembering I even had a dream? And yet I believe we dream all night long, constantly. Our brain never turns off, but I'm not remembering. So what causes us to remember a dream or not? Well, I think of levels of consciousness. And there's some liminal zone or a borderland state, as some people put it, where we're asleep enough to let our mind wander in the random dreamlike way and see these images and have these experiences, but we're close enough to the active conscious attention that we can remember, we can form memories and carry them with us. So it may be completely roll of the dice that you just happen to be a person who sleeps pretty constantly in the dream place where we can remember and reflects consciously when you're awake on yourself and has an analytical mind of that kind that would want to examine these things, and that there's just a series of happy accidents that all come together to you to give you this opportunity to say, look at yourself and your experiences. And I wish, so all of this to say, I wish it were more predictable. I wish I knew how to explain why this happened to you in this way. So, long story short, I end up with the miracle. I don't know. I don't know how else to explain it. Yeah. And it is, yeah, it just leaves me with that feeling of, well, I'm confused. The wizard is stumped. I don't know why. So why? I don't know. What we can do, what we can do with it is much, much different. I maybe didn't need to talk for 5 minutes about that, but that's where my brain's at on these. But I'm glad it's happening too. I guess that's one way to say it. I was looking at my notes here. So, and the most recent, this one had like 2 pages, and then I actually started doing diagrams with circles and representation, so I didn't forget. So you awaken in the forest. Now, have you had that experience of waking up in the forest before?
Mostly my dreams just start off where bam, I'm in the forest. I mean, it's not like I'm going to the forest. It's not like, and this forest is it's the same one throughout the whole dream. It's different from. It's weird. It feels familiar, but at the same time, I know that it's not where the region where I live. You know, the forest looks very different. You know, depending on where you go. This one, there was a forest that I visited in California called Muir. I think it was called Muir Woods,
I think I've heard of
and
that. Yeah.
it was more like that, where the trees were different and everything. But I know that it wasn't like an Oklahoma forest, you know.
Gotcha. Yeah.
So, but it doesn't feel strange. It feels like I know my way around. I'm familiar with it. It's just not what I'm used to on a day-to-day basis. I guess if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But these air dreams, I've never like traveling to the forest. Like I start the dream and bam, there I am. So. Yeah.
Good. I appreciate the explanation because it did seem different to me. I was like, okay, she hasn't described waking up in any of the dreams before. So awakening in dreams, I'm getting a sense over time talking to many people. It's one of those things that might be a little more consistent. It's like because we conceive of being asleep and being awake commonly as humans, it is the idea of coming into awareness of the real world. It's kind of conceptually. So, and again, if you're like, oh, no, that's not what it felt like to me, you can tell me, but tell me I'm wrong. Yeah. But if we look at it that way and we say, okay, so what, and again, with problem solving, what is the first step? Becoming aware that there's a problem. So you've suddenly awakened, you've become aware that you were in the same woods, but a new area of the woods. Now you've been, the sudden awareness, you have entered some kind of new territory that is familiar and not familiar, but now you're going to be presented with a new challenge, a challenge to your understanding. So I think there's something, I mean, if that makes sense to you, like a starting point to the dream. Your dream says, or your mind says, imagine you've just become aware of this problem, go. And now you're going to consider the problem.
And then I look down and there's a baby bird in my hands. So I guess that's the new problem.
Yeah, no, I think it is. And baby bird. So you've got something very delicate and helpless, and if you choose not to rescue it, if you throw it on the ground, it'll die. So you have an option with no choice at all, which is you have to do something. You've been something been dumped in your lap where you don't have the option to say I don't want to deal with this problem. The problem's it's in your hands, and you have to live with yourself after you make a decision. And the decision you made was, well, I'm going to go try and put it back in its nest. And the bear, you described it as not opposing you.
Yeah, so the bear comes out of the woods like he normally does, and I'm sitting here thinking, oh my gosh, he's gonna want me to go somewhere with him, and if I can't find this nest, this little bird's gonna die. And so that's when I asked the bear, I'm like, can I just find its nest, please? Like, and then the bear kind of just sits down and he kind of gives the impression of, well, go ahead, you know? I mean, he doesn't, he do what you got to do type of a thing. So
he validates your choice by not opposing it. Yes.
Yeah.
And that's interesting too, because if the bear is kind of representing more of your emotional side, you're actually telling your emotional side, no, this is how I feel. I have a very strong feeling about this. And that's where I say our most of our motivation for benevolence, for caring for the weak and the helpless is I will personally feel terrible if I do nothing. If I kill this creature, I'm going to hate myself. If I let it die when I could have saved it, we don't feel good about that. And that's kind of where sociopaths come in. They have no feeling. They could just crush the bird and throw it away and go on with their day. And because they have no feeling about it. They don't care.
Sure.
And that isn't, it's hard not to see that as evil. Because we see people doing, and sociopaths can very much be evil, but not all of them. Like the psychopath side of things, there are many psychopaths who are in high position. Your doctor could be one, you know, a Wall Street trader. They just have this lack this emotional response in a way that other people have that guides their emotions. So you're actually dictating to your own emotional self I know exactly how I feel about this, and um, so you don't need it to guide you in that sense. Like
Got
you're in alignment with what you think is right and what you feel is right, and you accomplish that. And why it's interesting too. Why a bird? Why and not a bunny rabbit? Not a butterfly. I mean, it could have been any kind of something very iconic to you about the innate helplessness, perhaps, of a baby bird type of thing.
Um, let me search my feelings here.
Sure.
I think with a bird, I think birds kind of, to me, they represent freedom, and in that more of a like elated freedom in a way, because who wouldn't love the ability to just fly, and you can fly away from things that you may not want to deal with, or you can fly towards things that you want to deal with. And so the fact that this bird is effectively grounded, and
Mm,
that it doesn't have mobility, and it doesn't have a way to escape, or it doesn't have a way, it doesn't have the ability to choose a path or a direction. It's entirely dependent on you, is maybe why it's a bird, you know?
yeah, yeah.
Um, and so, but I
That's
know that it needs to be nurtured. It needs to go back into its nest. It's not like I decided to keep it with me, or it's not like I decided to drive to the nearest like rehabilitation center. It's not like I decided to put it on the ground and make sure that I had like food or something. It was a very strong drive to put it back in the nest. It needs to go back there.
yeah, yeah.
So maybe
And
something like that.
yeah, no, that's all fantastic. So definitely there's I think your associations with the idea of birdness in this sense is right on target. There is a sense of additional possibilities,
Mm-hmm.
the freedom of flight, and it isn't just freedom as in escape. It can be, but it's also
Yeah.
maneuverability. It's
Mm-hmm.
a different way of interacting with the world that allows you. Like sometimes you need to be a gruff bear emotionally, and sometimes you need the agility of a bird to fly over here, fly over there, aerial acrobatics. There's birds do amazing things in the air, and they're off the ground. It's our maybe inspirational flights of fancy type of site, which is the
Sure.
title of the last episode. It's coming out this week, which when we were recording this, but it was last week's episode. Um, so there's a lot of great stuff in there. And again, if we imagine that, so some people's dreams have other people in them. They have icons representing others more than themselves. There's some dream theories that everything in our dreams is us. I think sometimes it's other people, but all of this stuff seems to be you and how you're processing your
Okay.
internal world. So I think the bird is also a part of you too. And there's maybe a part of you that wants to take flight, wants to have more freedom to be agile and aerial acrobatics and all those things, but you're not ready. You're conceptualizing, at least you feel like you're not ready. It's like this part of me that is growing is not ready to leave the nest. And it's got brothers and sisters that haven't even hatched yet. I mean, so there's, I wouldn't be surprised if, a few weeks later you have a dream and there's more birds in there and they're getting older or something's
Mm-hmm.
happening to them. Maybe their nest is under threat and you have to go stop someone from cutting down the tree. So there's some part of you that appears to be, it's just come onto your radar and you're recognizing it as underdeveloped. And so you're looking at it like this needs
Yeah.
more time, but I don't want to kill it. I don't want to reject it. I want to nurture it and let it grow. And so and then your emotional side of you is saying it's validating that decision of like by neutrality. It's saying, yeah, this does feel right. Trust that and go with it. It didn't try to pull you. It didn't try to eat the bird. And actually there's it's interesting, so the elephant and the bear were in conflict over that particular thing way back when, but here the birds appear to be not in conflict with the bear, and he's not discouraging or anything. That's fantastic too. So it's,
Yeah.
if you can get a harmony, like if you can get the raven and the elephant and the bear and these little birds to show up all in the same dream and to point you in the same direction, I would call that a prophecy. I would say that's that's something you need to do, and I don't know why, but I have a hard time with those.
For that.
Yeah. So when you're done, the bear lets you have the time you need to do something you think is important, and you I think you have more control over the bear than you think. That's the wrong way to put it. It's more like you're not at odds with the bear as much as it might feel sometimes. Yes, it's going to feel overbearing, right? But a lot of the times you can say, look, I'm going to put you in check. I'm going to say, yes, you're a feeling, you're strong, but I'm going to make a different decision, even if I'm conflicted about it. So it's a funny thing about our emotions. Like, we can't stop them, but we don't have to let them control us. Even if that's difficult, we can make our own choices. We have that free will. So even if it feels like, oh, I wish this urge would go away, I can't make the bear stop wanting something, but you don't have to do what it wants, and it can't make you, actually. Long story short on that. So now we're down to, when you're done with that, it gives you the space, and then you turn back to it and ask it what it wants. In a way, you like open yourself up to.
I mean, it's more of, I don't really say anything, but I kind of just put the bird back in the nest, climb down the tree, and then I just kind of approach him, and it's more of an unspoken, okay, I'm ready to go now. It's not like it's like, I know what you're here for. I know what you're going to do. So might as well just get it over with. And there
is very much this, I think, a growing trend of making peace with that side of yourself of like, okay, I'm accepting it for what it is. I know it's going to want to show me something. It's going to express itself in some way. Then I can still choose what to do with it, but I can't fight the expression and it's not going to work, and it's going to be unpleasant. And so don't try to stop the bear from telling me what it wants, and then I'll choose. So that's sometimes we get into those, I think fighting the bear and having the bear fight you back is more of like a denial side of things. And people think of that as a judgmental thing. It's just things we don't want to think about, things we'd rather not deal with. We all do that. We all put things on the back burner. When I have time, I'll get around to it. So there's been this, kind of struggle of self-acceptance of this aspect of your personality. And this stream is fantastic. Just this opening sequence, because it recognizes that you're more accepting of it. So it's willing to be patient. What you're doing is not trying to deny it. You're putting it on pause. Wait a minute. I got something more important to do. Now I'm ready for you. All in due time. And the bear's like, good deal. Let's go. Now I'm ready to, and it's perfectly content to let you do your thing as long as it knows it's not going to be ignored or opposed. It's going to be acknowledged, even if you don't obey it necessarily.
And maybe in a way, just it's about validating your feelings in terms of being like, okay, things are great, or things suck, or things make me angry or something. So let's acknowledge it and let's validate why I have that. So
And so did you end up walking with the bear or behind the bear? How did you know where to go?
I was working with him, actually. So that's a great point. Yeah, I was typically, when I do something, when the bear wants to lead me someplace, I'm actually walking in front of it, and then the bear is slightly behind me. Yeah, and then that's a great point. This time I was walking like at its shoulder, so we were kind of walking together, and it was a much easier time of it because I felt grateful that he let me, save the bird. And so I was just like, okay, I'm not going to struggle as much. Like, I'm not going to make as big of a deal out of it. It's kind of not a surrender in a way, but it's more of a, okay, let's just do this. Thanks for, you did me a solid. I'm going to do you a solid kind of thing.
I thought of exactly that too. You didn't submit to the bear. It isn't like that. You went from an antagonistic, resistant compliance to now walking shoulder by shoulder as almost in partnership. This side of yourself has got something to show you, and you're like, okay, show me. I'm not going to fight the showing. that's okay. And I think in the past, maybe there's more of a struggle of not wanting to see certain things or not being ready to deal with certain things, perhaps, or having a difficult time accepting that what that side of you, that side of you had something to show you that was of value. Sometimes that can be the struggle.
Yeah, typically in the previous dreams, I was usually in the middle of something. Like I was in the middle of doing a task, and the bear would show up and kind of interrupt me. I'm like, hang on, I'm not ready yet.
I don't have time for this.
Like,
yeah.
I don't have time for this. And then it's like at the end of the day, I just didn't have a choice. And so this was the first time where I actually kind of said, hey, can I do this first? And then we can do our thing. And then I was successful in that. So then I was like, okay, I'm not going to fight you out of spite because I'm just one of those stubborn people where I'm like, no, I want to go where I want to go, and the bear wasn't letting me. And so this was the first time I was like, okay, let's try to work together a little bit here.
Yeah, and I think that fits very well with, say, the psychological theory of mind that we have lately, of that when we more explicitly recognize, understand, acknowledge, and work with different aspects of our personality and drives and preferences and rational thoughts, all of it, the more we are in harmony with it, and not ruled by it, but accepting of it, the more we can say, okay, this, like pulling that idea out of your head and saying, oh, I had that thought, resisting the urge to pull it out. Like there's a part of us that says, examine that. Now that can be a compulsive negative thing to overthink, but a lot of times we just need to go, hey, I had a thought and I'm not certain what to make of it. So there's the act of pulling it out to examine it that we can do neutrally, and we don't have to do that for the purpose explicitly of agreeing or disagreeing. This is an examination. I don't know what this is. I'm going to understand it. So we do that then also with we can pull our emotions out. I am having this feeling. I neither agree nor disagree with this feeling. I'm simply going to look at it. So I think with the acceptance of examining the feeling is the walking shoulder to shoulder with the bear. Like, okay, I feel a certain way about something. Let's just acknowledge that as a baseline. Then I can decide is that feeling reasonable? Am I being dumb? Am I over exaggerating something and blowing it out of proportion? What do I say? Emotions. I'm probably not the first one. Emotions are always real. They're not always right. So sometimes we're afraid for no reason. Sometimes we're happy, but we were mistaken. I didn't judge the circumstance correctly. I thought those flowers were for me because the guy was walking right towards me. I was excited, and that was a real feeling. I think I'm getting flowers. Oh, they're for the girl next to me. He diverges at the last minute and hands them to her. Oh, it's terrible. That right? That feeling. It's like you were happy for the wrong reason or whatever. Anyway, I'm belaboring the point. So
no, it's good.
So you're going shoulder to shoulder with the bear, and it takes you into a very interesting kind of clearing where it's not the typical one. These trees are pressed so close together, it's almost like a container. This is a bounded space that has a hard boundary. It's like what happens here is not going to get out in a way.
Right.
It's like a very tight physical barrier, a wall. So this is a very bounded space. That's an interesting. The first thing that popped into my head when you were saying that, it came back to me just now, is that a safe place of experimentation.
Maybe.
And what I mean by that is, that just by entering this space, or you've represented it to yourself, that whatever I do here I'm not going to allow it to get out, or it is not going to affect anything outside this space. It's kind of a freedom to explore something. Like I'm going to hold out keep doing that thing with holding out a mental idea. Is like we can play with an idea in our imaginations and it won't affect the real world. We can just say, what if I let myself think about a certain thing or feel a certain way? Let's put it in a safe place to contain it, just in case I decide I don't like it and I don't want it to get out. We have the choice of whether to carry our ideas into the world or not. So I don't know if that's making sense to you, or if this is something, a limitation you feel imposed on you. Like this was, I did this myself, or this was a place made for me for a reason.
I think for me, it's more of like there's just a time and place for everything. And so it may be that I'm putting myself in an environment where I'm allowing myself to kind of open up. And like I said, I take I take time when the environment is right and things are kind of settled is when I have time to process and think about things and my actions and how I'm going to move forward. And it's like self-reflection type
Okay.
process. And so this might be a barrier where it's like, okay, you're in a safe space in order to understand what you're going through or how to process things, and it's not going to get out. So
Okay.
it might be one of those environments.
Okay. Yeah, that's kind of, I'm glad we were
Yeah.
able to work that out a little bit too. So it's, yeah, it would be a different place of like, I was thrust into a place that felt like a prison. It felt like I was being constrained, but this is more like, that's why I was leaning into that idea of this is a place where it's okay to explore this kind of a feeling.
Yes.
I've contained it. There's something where we recognize as the right time and the right place for a type of thing. And it can be represented a lot of different ways, but you're in the forest, but it's very much a contained area of, so that you can allow
Yeah.
yourself to deal with it.
And it didn't feel like a prison. Like it
Yeah.
didn't feel like I was being like, oh, what's going on here? Is this a cage? Is this a trap or anything? It was more of in a weird sort of way, the first thing I thought of is an arena. It's like
Yeah.
here's a cleared out space for you to do whatever type of a thing. It's more of it was more of entering into almost like an arena type feeling. But it wasn't foreboding and it wasn't like it wasn't I didn't feel a negative emotion. It was more of here's an area for you.
Yeah, and even though arena comes to mind, now some people might conceptualize that as a place to do battle necessarily, but that it didn't. You didn't experience combat there. You weren't
Yeah.
anticipating danger of a physical kind. But an arena, that's an interesting. That idea pops into your head. It can also be the. I think that shares the root with area, place.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's exactly as you said, right place, right time.
Yeah.
This is where you were meant to deal with this kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's a place
It's
for
more
that.
of that. At first I thought, well, maybe I should say like a stage. And then I'm like, no, because to me, a stage indicates that you're putting on a performance for other people to
Yeah.
witness. And for me, this wasn't
Not quite a
that. It's
stadium.
more of,
Yeah. No one's
no,
there to watch
no.
it.
It's more of here is a cleared off space that you can do stuff and allow that stuff to happen, if that makes
Yeah.
sense.
And then choose whether or not it isn't going to leak out on its own. It
Right,
isn't going to
exactly.
involuntarily spread. It's got a nice firm boundary of like the right place, the right time to deal with this kind of a thing. So you allow yourself then to have an experience, to have a thought about this particular thing that you needed contained in some way. What is it? Maybe you weren't ready to share with the world. Are you trying to get down? What are you doing? This is my puppy.
I didn't even know they were there.
I know, he just sleeps in my lap. He's
Aw.
probably got to go pee soon. I'll take him out in a minute. But so yeah. What was I saying there? Eggs. So so first you needed to know it was the right place and the right time to deal with this thing. And then you could allow yourself, okay, let's open that door and explore it. I'm ready now.
Mhm.
Maybe you resist the bear and you say, I don't want to go in there yet. I'm not ready. It's not the right time. And the place felt wrong. And the bear says, okay. But you walk shoulder to shoulder with, so something about embracing your emotions in that situation, validating that you have them and that they're leading you to consider a particular type of thing allows you to see what you need to see in the right space and the right time. And so your experience of this place was you step in and instantly, was it left foot, right foot? Or do you know?
Let me think. It was left foot. No. Yeah, it was left foot. Yeah.
Left foot is the greenery, vines,
It's the
and
greenery one. Yeah.
the explosion.
Mhm.
So you step, and that's the first thing you notice. Whoa, sudden generativity, vibrant growth, the iconic representation of just as much as withering, burnt, charred is decay. This is growth. So we think positive and negative, but cancer grows, so it's not always positive.
Yeah.
Growth is not always. This is healthy, positive growth. Yeah.
Have you ever seen, I don't know if you watch anime, but have you ever seen Princess Mononoke?
Yes.
With the forest guardian, and you know how he steps on, and like when he takes that
Yes.
step, like all of that, it was kind of like that in a way.
Yeah.
So,
And,
yeah.
and so some people at a superficial level like might go, oh, we watched that movie and then he had this dream. Of course, like, well, yeah, maybe that's where that particular variety of image, but why you in this context for this reason in this arena, why are your emotions leading you to that? So, and why the balance too. So
Right.
one foot, you step with one foot. So walking is making progress. It's taking action. Sometimes you have within you something being expressed as this growth, generativity, this explosion of vibrant, positive life essence, whatever it is. You step with the other foot and it looks like the opposite around you. Everything withers and dies. And so how many steps did you take before it? Go ahead.
Probably less than 10. Like,
And then you
I would
notice
say,
the trend.
yeah, it was probably less than 10. And it was more of me being shocked that I was killing things, and I was like, I can't do this anymore. Like, I was just like, this isn't good. I don't want to be responsible. Not so much be responsible, but because I didn't understand what was happening, I didn't want to have a negative reaction based on my actions that I didn't know why it was happening. Does that? Hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah.
So that's when I was just like, okay, no more stepping with the right foot anymore.
Yeah, for sure.
Then I
and
began
then
to
you
hop.
went to hop. So there's an interesting progression there too that might mean something. The idea of you became aware of the phenomenon with the first step and the second step. It wasn't like you got 10 steps in and suddenly you realized, oh, my right foot is doing something else like I didn't even know. It was from the very beginning, and you didn't stop immediately. You did a bit of a the curious scientist thing, which is
Yes.
Let's see if this is a pattern, and you verify this is very definitely a pattern. I've 10 times seems to be a magic number in your head for that moment to say, I have viewed this pattern enough to know that it is absolutely a pattern. I know exactly what it is, and I'm not happy with the death side of things. So there's why this double power. I would say humans in general, we are all have the capacity for good and evil, and so we can make things grow, we can tear things apart, or at least we can facilitate growth, because we can't make anything. We can carve stone perhaps, but we can't cause a flower to exist. We can only take a seed and plant it. Yeah, so the idea that existing growth can be nurtured or expanded. Did I lose you? I think it froze.
Oh. No, I'm here.
Oh, now you're just delayed a little bit, but I can hear you.
Oh, okay.
Maybe it'll catch up. It does this sometimes. I think it's okay. I talk a lot anyway. Okay. So there could be so there's some framing to this, I think, which is understand that you have a generative and destructive capacity. And you get to the point where you're like, okay, I understand that I'm going to need to live with expressing both with alternating steps, or I could choose to just hop on one foot and only go down one path. Go ahead.
Yeah, I will say that, and I was trying to think of a better way to say it, but I wasn't so concerned about the fact that there was destruction. I was more concerned about the fact that I didn't know what caused the destruction. Gotcha. And I think that's a kind of that's an important distinction.
Yes.
I don't know why this is happening, so I don't want to take part in continuation unless I understand it. It was more of that so then that's when I decided, okay, let's not even do that anymore. Let's just stay on the side that I'm more comfortable with, or that has more growth and is more beneficial. So
yeah. And now that you kind of imagine yourself doing it, did you see yourself walking kind of straight towards the center, as if along a line, a diameter line straight from one side of the circle to the other?
Yeah, because I figured that the bear wanted me to. It wasn't like I was meandering or anything. It was more placing my bets that if anything was interesting going to happen, it was going to happen in the middle. Even
Yeah.
though interesting things were happening,
Yeah.
I felt like it wasn't done yet. If that
Yeah.
makes sense.
There's something very, very iconic in our minds too about the idea of moving towards the center of a circle. It's why we have draw a target with the dot and
Yeah.
the rings. It's like anytime we take aim at something, there is more or less degrees of hitting what we're aiming at, getting to the reason. We choose to go to the store and we drive to the park. That's not the purpose. We've missed that target completely. So we've gotten nowhere near the center of that circle, which is arriving at the store to purchase the thing and bring it home. It 100 different ways behaviorally. So very, very common idea of, well, I was headed for the center of the circle. Of course you were. Why wouldn't you? Yes. But also great. I mean, wonderful, and lots of circles in this one too. But also that an interesting thing that you weren't at all uncomfortable with the growth. You were like, this is beautiful. This is wonderful. And I think we have a bias as humans towards that direction. We hate destruction, decay, in some ways chaos is like the reason I would say, nighttime and chaos and the dark blackness became associated with things is like, that's when bad things happen. That's when we can't see. We're primates that with very poor night vision. And the idea of chaos is like, it's the unpredictable thing that might kill us. It's the consequence we can't anticipate. It's the fact that our bodies are falling apart and we'd rather be alive, so we're very much biased in that growth and greenness. No one, what is it? Horror movies. They very often go with the kind of jaundiced yellow crumbling wallpaper.
Yeah.
Yeah. Things fall. And that's a visceral body horror thing we get. Okay. Long story short. So you're acknowledging this experience of your capacity to cause growth and to cause destruction. And you understand what growth is for in a way that makes you comfortable. We have a bias in that direction, but you're not understanding your own maybe capacity for destruction or chaos or however we conceptualize it. But this idea, but then again, sometimes you have to say, knock down an old house to build a new one. There's nothing inherently evil about destruction in the right context. But you don't know how to put it to use. So you're like, I'm not going to express something I can't understand until I know why I'm doing this. Maybe it's better I don't do that, which is, I think it's fantastic. It's very healthy. What else? So you decide to hop only on one leg. I'm going to lean into what I can be relatively certain is okay. There's no harm in this, but then you end up kind of tripping on a rock. So, and literally it was tripping on a rock.
Yeah, it was literally, there was like a rock or something, and I guess I didn't see it because I was kind of looking around to be like, okay, I'm waiting for the thing to happen.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden it was kind of one of those slow-mo things where I was about to hop, I saw the rock and I was like, oh no. And then I just, lo and behold, as I'm falling, I twist and I just wipe out flat on my back. Like just down.
Yeah. Very interesting there too. Okay. So there's something about, okay, you choose in your mind to, well, I'm only going to lean into the stuff that I do understand that I can be relatively certain is beneficial, positive, productive, whatever. And something about restricting yourself to only that side leads you to a fall. It leads you to trip over a natural obstacle, a rock. You weren't hit by something that came flying at you, an arrow. You weren't, the environment wasn't suddenly flooded to remove you from it. It's like there's something very personal related to decision-making and choices and being responsible for your own actions, that the decision to hop and focus only on the positive led you to a place of where you were out of balance and were likely to fall over some kind of natural obstacle and put you in a position where you involuntarily express everything. Like you're back to, it's almost like that chaos or decay side of things. It's going to come out of you no matter what. So maybe you do need to understand it and if it can't be suppressed, it has to be harnessed in a way. And so it leaves you with this again, and we're back to this dichotomy of things. You've got the black and the white animals, and you've got the tension between the intellect and the heart. You've got a very bounded, and the first thing I saw was this whole yin yang thing of like, whoa, that's like, and the line down the middle. And And so it all comes out of you. You end up on your, it's very interesting too. So you kind of fly through the air in a twist and you end up on your back with your feet pointing back towards the bear and from in the direction you came in.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's interesting too. You didn't fall forward on your face. You didn't land with your feet pointing into the circle. It's very much you're pointing back towards the way you came. And in that alignment with the bear coming towards you. So there's a kind of, even if you try to maybe, okay, dreams aren't always true, but they always say something true. So you're at least exploring the possibility that attempting to exist in this unbalanced way where you only embrace one side of a duality is going to lead you to a place where, well, that's unsustainable. There's something that cannot be eliminated, so it must be dealt with. And you're like, well, I'm flat on my back. It's one of the most vulnerable positions. I'm not in a position of strength. I'm not standing up. It's almost a position of surrender in a way of like involuntary surrender. You've been made low to learn something important. And the bear comes right up the middle. And then that's when you actually see he's got the opposite halves. And I drew a whole thing that's like, if you imagine a circle and I put crosshairs in it and I shade one and I shade the other one and the other two are left white. I got that iconic image too. And that's another kind of a crosshairs target type of situation going on there. Aiming at something. Maybe you don't know what it is you're aiming at, or you know there's something to aim at, but you haven't identified it yet. So you've got this, and he comes and stands like over you, you said, or
like he's like my body is like underneath him. You know, he's standing, so there's enough clearance for me to exist underneath him. But yeah, he's like I can't get up at that point. I don't try, but yeah, there's no way I could get up without, hitting a bear.
Yeah, he was a physical obstacle of like, so your emotions kind of in a way made you sit in this place and have this experience of like, really look at this, really, I guess, really look at it. There's another way to say it. It's like, don't try to run away from holding on to this idea. This is important enough. Your emotions are saying there's something here that I need to learn that I will benefit from, I think, or that at least your emotional side believes is a benefit. And it shows you that, again, with the yin yang thing, that there can be order in excess and chaos in excess. And sometimes where there is chaos in excess, we need order. So maybe that emotional side is like bringing balance to the chaotic side by the order of the greenery on the bear, the lustrous half, or that can be also that where you are obligated to exist in some kind of decay or chaos, your emotional side will be there in its full luster to counterbalance that, to say, you can get through this. And then on the other side, and then on the other side is like, so where there is beauty in the world and lush greenery and growth, your emotional side will probably be there to remind you, that this is all happening in the context of that it's temporary in some ways, that there's always a balance. I'm brought back to that idea.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm getting a note. Okay. Apparently, my wife and I were going to go shopping today. Apparently, our local store is a mess. We were going to go, early in the afternoon, and apparently it's just swarmed with people, of course, waiting to the last minute. We're not even doing barbecue and anything fancy. We're just like, we need milk and
bread and eggs.
Yeah, that idea. So we're just going to go tomorrow. Screw it.
Sounds good.
Yeah, that's fine with me. Okay, so I rambled a lot there, and I don't know if you had additional thoughts or those inspired any for you.
No, I think it's one of those things where, let me try to find the words here. Yeah. I think that I do like the idea of when you said that it's almost a hopeful message, but then it's also a reminder message that even though, there are good things that kind of exist in chaos. And for me personally, I'm kind of more of a person that embraces the idea of chaos. For me, I feel like chaos is the catalyst for growth and for change and for evolution. And I do like the idea of order in terms of a structure, and I think that they're both important. But for me, I think that there needs to be more of a degree of suffering in some capacity in order to go to the next level of our understanding or evolution. Because if we were comfortable, then nothing would ever, you would just stagnate and eventually just, you wouldn't go to anywhere.
Yeah.
And so to me, it's one of those things where even though it is green, to not become completely comfortable with the fact that it is, because there's always next challenges, or there's always a degree of of discomfort around the next bend. I mean, that's just life. That's just what happens. But at the same time, even though things are, you might be uncertain, and you might be in this maelstrom of just life experiences or things that you just feel out of control of. At the same time, there is a sense of beauty, and there is a sense of organized mess, as it were, for you to kind of understand and be like, okay, this isn't final. This isn't something that will last indefinitely. And so you will get growth from this. You will overcome it. And I think it's the balance of those two ideals that is something that I probably need to understand a little bit better, and not get so bogged down in only one side. And so I think that's kind of my interpretation of it, hopefully.
No, for sure. I think that's all fantastic. And I wanted you to, sometimes we just talk and talk and talk until something clicks and makes sense. And
that's that definitely clicked.
Right? That's what and not that you were talking and talking, but the idea, that's what I do. I ramble until you have an inspired thought based on my rambling. And so same way back and forth. So I think that's true. Because if you showed yourself that you're likely to, say, stumble and fall by being out of balance. Hopping on one leg is hardly a stronger icon for being out of balance. And literally in this, like, one step does one thing and one step does another. So you very well could have hopped on the other leg. That'd be out of balance too. So embracing the idea that there will be, what is it? So there's a biblical thing, I think, is this too shall pass, which a lot of people look at in terms of, okay, struggles, pain, bad things will go away. Yes, also good things. This too shall pass. Also good things. So nothing is permanent. Even the stuff we wish was, but definitely. So we've had that. It's a good thing when the bad things go away. It's a bad thing when the good things go away. But it's going to happen. And that's back to that yin yang thing.
And I think if I could also, I think it also kind of has a dual meaning in terms of, sometimes I get bogged down into always doing the right thing, and in a way it kind of, because my default is to try to do what I believe is the right thing. And sometimes I don't necessarily have to do that, and sometimes it's okay to just kind of indulge in something, or get that extra hour of sleep, or have a dessert, or something that's a little bit more things that I don't want to say like hedonistic in a way, but don't deny that part of yourself that is there, that maybe sometimes you just want to do something because it feels good, or you don't have to have a reason to do it. You don't have to hold up an ideal. You don't have to, take up a mantle all the time. Just do something for you, relax about, and so it might also be that too.
For sure. No, I think these are all great thoughts inspired by the conversation. If that was the purpose of the dream, we're doing it right now. That's a very good thing too, because we look at the polar opposites. On one side is the hedonistic self-indulgence, all 7 deadly sins, and we're just killing ourselves and hurting people around us because we are so, it's like the essence of selfishness. Now, on the opposite side is that martyrdom. I do nothing for me. I sacrifice everything. And then you got to say, on either side of it, are you living a real life? And somewhere in the middle is we sacrifice sometimes, we indulge sometimes, we try to keep both in their proper balance, and we try not to beat ourselves up about not doing enough, and we try to make sure we're not being lazy about things we probably should take care of and people we can help. And it seems like this dream is very much examining at least those themes in your mind. As if I lean into is it self-destructive even? Is this circle me? And if I lean into the wrong things, am I going to hurt myself? If I lean into too much of the good stuff, I'm going to be out of balance and I'm probably going to trip. And I mean, it's not going to go away. I'm not going to stop the potential for self-destruction or expressing negative things. I got to put it in context and use it where it's appropriate. This is where I stop. And the wizard is not a guru. I don't tell you what is the proper, what is the proper balance for you, but hopefully we've come down to something where we kind of conceptualized why this imagery needed to happen and why all these such interesting geometric shapes popped up, circles and divided quadrants and different things. Oh, that's fantastic. I love that stuff. You were telling me this dream and I'm like, somebody should animate this. That would be a fascinating thing to animate.
And that it was definitely one of those things. And like I said, I think I said towards the end, like, I wish that I could be an artist so that I can draw what I see in my head. Mm-hmm. And I still have that image in my head at the very end with this very rounded looking bear head and, having it be split and at odds at the environment around it. And it just, it's something that kind of sticks with me. And I'm like, and so I'm like, wow, this could be like an awesome like album cover or a really great tattoo. Not sure which one it's going to be, but it kind of has that very graphical type of thing that kind of catches your eye. So
I hope there's someone out there listening that wants to draw it. That would be fantastic.
Yeah,
I'll put it up on the Twitters and whatnot, or make it
for sure
in the comments. So I'll definitely post it in the Discord, that kind of thing for everyone to see. So we'll see how that goes.
We'll see.
We're about 3 hours in. This is how episodes get to 4.5 hours.
Yes.
So three is not long for me. I'm not like, oh my God, this was terrible. But I also didn't expect we would go this long. I thought we could wrap it up in about 2. Oh, there's so much to say.
Well, I really appreciate it. It's given me a lot to think about, and it's really given me a snapshot into what my own needs are and how I process them, especially during this time in my life where it's a little bit chaotic. And so, this was really beneficial for me. So, and hopefully you learned some things too, like we were talking about earlier.
Every time. So. Yeah. Oh, and I love the idea that I can, I love the mystery of it. I don't know what any of this means when we start. I've never heard the dream before. Let's just do it. We'll do it live. But we get to something where like, I'm able to say, okay, what if I look at it this way? And you're like, yeah. And I'm like, zing. Don't, I love that. So, okay. Well, I never know how to wrap it up. I just do the outro stuff, but, no,
that's great.
Right.
I just want to give you my sincerest thanks. Oh. This is really beneficial and it was a pleasure to speak with you today. So thank you. Thank you very much.
Happy to do it. Yeah. Well, I'll just say, by way of outro, this is our friend, Shelly out of Oklahoma City. She is a microbiologist and author of the, was it Starlight Trine Chronicles?
It was, yep.
Okay, mm-hmm. I got it. And you can find her at shelleydhires.com, link in the description. And for my part, would you kindly like, share, subscribe, tell your friends? Always need more volunteer dreamers and viewers for the game streams and whatnot. 16 currently available works of historical dream literature, the most recent Dreams and Their Meanings by Horace G. Hutchinson. All this and more at BenjaminTheDreamWizard.com. And I'll just say thanks again to Shelly. It's I can't do this without a guest, so I'm glad you showed up.
Oh, thank you. I really appreciate it.
Good deal. And everybody out there, thanks for listening.